OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It was an interesting and slightly wild night across Europe last night. If there's anything specific that you want us to talk about, we're going to get dug into the Man City stuff in a few minutes' time with Sam Lee. And we have started a conversation, I think, this morning about your favourite assists. You think the assist is better than the goal last night?
Ger, I was open-mouthed for a while after that goal went in, and simply because of Joao Cancelo's assist. It was like Colin, our producer, was making the point outside that he didn't have to cross it with the outside of his right foot, but that's his preferred motion. Could have crossed it in with his left.
He's a right footer though.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, the skill level required to get it on a sixpence from that distance with the outside of a foot. It kind of got me thinking about the best ever assists and where it ranks. There's probably no point in trying to rank it. Like Phil Egan talking outside in the office was asking, like, some assists for big goals don't get credit because they don't need credit. Like Hector Enrique is a name that none of us know, and I just was quickly googling Hector Enrique this morning, who passed the ball a couple of yards to Diego Maradona in '86 before he went on that mazy run.
They all count.
He didn't do much else in his career apart from that little pass.
Hey, look,
he won a World Cup with Argentina.
If he'd just been smart enough to ask Maradona for his jersey, he'd be quids in now.
He was on MasterChef Argentina a few years ago, and his bio literally mostly talked about the fact that he passed the ball to.
Oh, right, so he's dining out on a fair play.
Like he's literally.
He definitely should be dining out on that. Is this not just your Eric Cantona fetish coming to the fore?
I don't think so. I hope not. But like,
you know, in the movie, Cantona's asked about what his favourite moment in all of his life was. What was your favourite goal?
It was an assist.
It was a pass.
It was a pass. Yeah, and Cantona had so many of them. I even remember.
Assist. Come on, you lost your character there for a second.
Sorry. Berbatov had a great one on the. I can't remember who it was against for United, but it was on the sideline where he crossed it in for Ronaldo, but he literally.
West Ham column saying, is it similar outside of the boot?
No, it was literally like a quick turn, two move turn where he put the West Ham defender on his arse and just had to pass it into the box. You have to see that one. That one was epic. The Niall Quinn header for Robbie Keane.
I mean, look,
Germany.
We're a bit biased, but yeah, that was
slightly
pretty good.
biased.
It was amazing. Like it was kind of like he was, it was like a basketballer.
It was perfect. The long ball from Gary Breen needs a bit of credit as well, because go long at that moment in time against Germany in the last minute when you need a goal. Like the Beckham, it wasn't even Beckham. The Sheringham header from the Beckham corner. I know there's
a theme here. They're all Man United or Ireland.
There you go. But the things that stick in my head is from my childhood. But like, I don't think Teddy Sheringham gets the credit that he deserves for that little flick on. It's obviously Ant Solskjaer has won it, but
it's just a flick on.
It's just a flick on, but I mean, he had scored the equaliser moments before. Without Teddy Sheringham, a goal and an assist in injury time.
The Berbatov one, I think everybody will. As soon as you see it, you'll realise it. It's a top-in goal for Cristiano Ronaldo, but he does the pirouette on the ball.
Yeah, and somehow keeps it in play.
Yeah.
Like, the ball should have gone out of play for that one. But
yeah, did Berbatov not win a league? Or why do people think it was a failure? Why do people generally assume that Berbatov didn't work out at Man United? But it seems to have done, does it?
I think he's,
if you want,
cult hero might be a.
Column's like wants to fight us here.
He actually was one of myself and my best friend, who's also a United fan, had arguments galore over this when he was at United. I was a massive Berbatov fan, to the point where, when he signed, I stayed up all night to watch that final deadline day for Berbatov, and I think Robinho signed for City on the same night.
All right.
And Berbatov was, of course, lying on the floor of the seat with Alex Ferguson in the car from Manchester Airport. And I heard then that he was living in the Lowry Hotel in Manchester for his first few weeks.
Everybody who lived in the Lowry. It's always been a failure.
Of course. But I bought a magazine and posted it to Dimitar Berbatov, care of the Lowry Hotel. Never heard back, but I mean, trying to get his autograph.
What was the magazine?
It was. I think he was on the front of maybe 442 magazine.
I was just wondering, like, what were you sending? Like a cooking magazine, a wildlife magazine? Who knows?
Something relevant.
But whatever they sell, I'm on it.
But he was one of those guys who, like, obviously his touch was immaculate. But that assist, it came into my head when I was watching Cancelo last night. Not because it was in any way similar to Cancelo's outside of the boot assist last night, but the assist sometimes.
I think we're like burying the lead.
Sorry, Haaland's goal was obviously class.
The assist is good, but it's just an outside of the like. It's good. It's in that corridor of uncertainty.
I think it needs to be a level up from good, Ger, possibly.
Well, it looks great, right? But it's where you would expect the ball to go. It's to the far post and it's swinging away from the goalkeeper. It's like what you should do in that scenario, and especially when he's not being closed down, right?
Yeah, but it's not a simple skill.
I'm not saying it's simple, but it is like it's here, right? So let's say your corner kick is here, the assist is here, but the goal is up here.
Really? Right.
The goal is like you're never going to see these goals. Like you don't see these goals.
But the goal.
I would argue that that's one of the greatest goals I've ever seen. Like it's that good.
Because the assist was so immaculate as well.
Well, the assist looks good, but like it's just an outswinger away from the goalkeeper along the 6-yard box. It's where. So I was never coached properly at football, but what position did you play?
I was a striker. Still am a striker for Monaghan Town FC, Ger.
Okay.
Don't take it away from me.
Okay. So
I can appreciate Haaland even like.
So, but what are your left back and your left wing back and your right back and your right wing back and your right winger? What are they? Where are they told to cross the ball? Hit the near post, hit the far post.
Yeah, but the outside of the boot, and it literally had to float over the head of the Dortmund defender. It looks perfectly weighted.
It's not. I mean, it's just. There's a million of those, and sometimes the run is good, sometimes the run is bad, and sometimes he jumps to head it, and it looks okay.
But he was taking a risk, because if he had done that with the outside of the boot and the first Dortmund defender clears with a header, you're thinking, wasted. Why did he do that with the outside of the boot?
Well,
but he took the risk and it paid off.
I trust Cancelo to do whatever he wants. He's a very, 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 very good footballer.
Yeah, and he likes that outside of the boot.
Yeah.
But the finish was also pretty. Like, I don't know how someone's legs can possibly go that high.
I think the finish is outrageous.
Yeah.
I think the finish is like who was talking about?
He must do yoga, I think, Haaland, because in order to stretch your legs that distance, you'd have to be fairly flexible.
I was actually thinking the one thing that's going to stop Haaland having a 10-year career at Man City is that he's going to become a movie star, where that like Hollywood are going to come and look at this guy and go, okay, we're signing you up for like a 15 movie Marvel series kung fu crossover. Like that's what's going to stop Erling Haaland, because he's just going to get bored killing everybody week in, week out.
Yeah. I was of the opinion that Haaland before he signed, I was like, it doesn't guarantee City winning the Champions League. I'm now fully on board that absolutely City are going to win the Champions League.
I don't think it guarantees. Funny enough, I think the performance last night from Dortmund is a really good template for better teams. Dortmund is still a very good team, but they've been shorn of a lot of their best players, like including that guy. So if you are Real Madrid, or if you are any of those other teams who have enough about them, you can actually look at that and go, well, because City were very frustrated.
Yeah, and like the funny thing for me was that Dortmund had lost. Now you can say what you like about league form heading into games like that, but Dortmund had lost 3-0, I think, to Leipzig in the Bundesliga the last weekend. So it's funny, and the quotes as well. And I think quotes in advance of a game are actually funnier to read after the fact, because one of the Dortmund defenders, Schlotterbeck, he was speaking before the game. And he was asked about the time where he stopped Haaland from scoring when Freiburg beat Dortmund 2-1 in the Bundesliga in last year, when Haaland was obviously still at Dortmund. But he said, in that game I realised how good I can be. I know how to stop Erling Haaland. We have to stop them as a whole. Erling is the least of our problems. And then Schlotterbeck comes on. 5 minutes later, Haaland scores the goal last night. So it's justice.
It's tempting fate a little bit, but it did take an absolute worldie from him. A kung fu kick away from the goal. Right, Colin is here. Is he allowed to talk? Are you allowed to talk? I'm
allowed to talk. No, I'm just enjoying the chat. Great show this morning, guys.
Thanks, Colin.
You did put it together. A good solid Dennis Irwin, 7 out of 10.
I just saw exercise by Dimitar Berbatov. He was a success.
Oh, yeah, 100%. He won a league, didn't he?
He won the league, 2011, and he was top scorer. So he signed in 2008. They won the league 2009, won the league 2011. And he was top scorer that year, and he was left out of the Champions League final squad against Barcelona at Wembley, and Michael Owen was put as the sub striker on the bench.
That was a shocking mistake.
Why was that?
Ferguson said in his book his two regrets at United were Berbatov being left out of the squad that year, and I think Park being left out in
2008.
Yeah. Which is both fair
points.
Squad.
Yeah.
So he bottled it, is what you're saying. The two Man United fans are saying that Ferguson bottled it by his own admission. Why did he put Michael Owen in the team?
Because Michael Owen that year was quite good, I think. It was quite good for a couple of years. So the Man City goal was September 2009.
Grand, as opposed to quite good.
But he was a kind of danger sub at the time.
Well, I remember.
But it was a big omission not having Berbatov in the 18 was insane. Like, right, whatever about
why
the starting
was Berbatov on the team?
he wasn't playing that much
I
at the
think he
time.
said in his book he's talked stylistically that he fancied Owen against the Barcelona defenders more than Berbatov. He started Javier Hernandez up front in that final. In
That's right. It was Rooney and
Chicharito.
Chicharito. And that year, Berbatov scored 20 goals in the Premier League, which was top scorer. So it was a really low-scoring individual year.
Yeah.
So was that the year it's 2-0? Is that the penalty, the Messi header?
That was the.
No, that was 2009. This was 3-1.
2011.
Pedro scored first for Barcelona. Then Rooney equalised.
Yeah,
It
just
was
before
1-1,
half-time,
which
wasn't
was against run of play. And then Messi scored the under the body in Van der Sar.
Yeah.
And was there another goal?
Pedro, Messi, and David Villa scored.
Villa's. I don't remember Villa's goal.
But it wasn't
was
close.
3-1. No, it was the exact same as 2009.
It was
2-goal margin.
It was 1-1 at half time, and you were thinking at half time this could go either way, maybe. But Barca were on top for sure,
Right.
From my recollection.
Yeah.
So, but is there not a bit of ambivalence from a lot of Manchester United fans about the Berbatov era that actually he didn't?
I know there would be. No, I think he was signed as another Eric Cantona, which is kind of a lazy enough comparison because languid forward, but they were very different characters. But I think Berbatov is a victim of United's unbelievable success at that time. I think if Berbatov was signing on either side of that era, it'd be like, well, master was signing. Because he didn't do anything wrong. Berbatov did nothing wrong. He just probably didn't fit into the all-action front three of Rooney, Tevez, Ronaldo, and co. He was just different.
The 5 goals against Blackburn still stand out for me. There was one outside of the foot pass, where he passed it out to Nani, I think.
Oh.
He was involved in the end of the move as well.
That must
for
be
one of
the
the
most common old goal I gets shown on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
I don't know what the algorithm's showing me. I must
get it a
love
lot.
beautiful build-up play because
Yeah.
that was the 1-2 with Evra initially.
Yes, the
Outside
flick.
of the right to Nani, and he gave it back. Nani gave it back then to Berbatov.
And then there's the hat-trick against Liverpool. Berbatov
So-
scored.
Yeah. So he was a success, but at Spurs he was transformational, and at United he became just another striker. I think that's basically what happened to Berbatov.
Because people expect him to do the same number of numbers, same sort of numbers as Van Nistelrooy.
Yeah, but I mean he won two league titles.
None of you have talked about Redondo, who actually does the same
Oh my God, Redondo's the best.
the same
assist.
same end as Berbatov.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's actually into the same goal, and it's
the
the same
same size,
tapping goal, except it's against Manchester United, and neither of the Man United fans brought this up. Whoa, what's that?
I have Shane. I have a text in there from Rory Larmer, fan of the show.
Good man, yeah.
FFS. Shane talking about Blackburn losing 5-0 at 20-8 in the morning. That is a tough start to Roy's Thursday. Huge Blackburn fan.
I did like that Blackburn team, actually.
You know, I'm a massive Blackburn fan.
You can keep this to your WhatsApp group,
Must be the blue and white.
It must be the blue and white,
That was interesting. What are you saying there? You were criticising something. Oh, no, sorry, Redondo. Redondo's assist. Oh, my God, I completely forgot about that. Do you know that one?
For the Ronaldo goal?
No, for Raul.
It's a Raul goal.
Okay, yeah.
And it was, I think it was Henningberg was the victim. And it was right on the left touchline, but he was a holding midfielder, Redondo.
Yeah.
Excellent player, but played a lot less than he should have because of injury. He went to AC Milan afterwards.
Yeah, I don't think you can call him a holding midfielder.
He was a number 6.
But I mean,
I'm gonna
he does have
live
number
react
6
to
on
He's
his
blind
back.
playmaker, as he would later be known.
I'd
Yeah.
say-
In front of me, so he flicks it back. He just about keeps the ball in. He absolutely wrecks Henningberg.
Henningberg, yeah.
I still think the Berbatov one is slightly more impressive.
Oh, I would say Redondo because that's on its style of play.
Champions League, buddy.
Sorry, well, yeah,
Champions
I guess.
League.
Champions League.
Not like West Ham already were 1-0 up against a mediocre West Ham team
Fair.
who may or may not be going down. Gianfranco Zola was the manager.
Yeah.
That was against an Alex Ferguson team.
Yeah. Who's in goal for United there? Was it Bremen van der Hau or Bosnich?
It was that era where it was an uncertain goalkeeper time. Yeah, it could have been Bosnich, maybe. Not sure.
No, it's Van der Hau.
Van der Hau, is it? Yeah.
Right.
But I think the assist last night of Cancelo was absolutely amazing.
But the goal's better. The finish is,
the goal-
the finish is outrageous.
I did think when it was crossed in, I thought, oh, that's just too far for Haaland. But then when he did what he did, and I was actually saying to Emma earlier, is like, are we getting too accustomed to world-class goals scored on a regular basis? Because I do feel if that goal was scored 10 to 15 15 years ago, we'd be waxing lyrical for about a week. But now it's just another great goal by Manchester City.
I don't think it's just another great goal. I think that it's world-class finishing. It's one of the best goals I've ever seen. Is
it really one of the best goals you've ever seen?
Yeah, definitely. It's like, because it's an incredible feat of athleticism in a moment where it's important. Okay, so it's still only group stages. Now, if he was to do it in a quarter-final, semi-final, final, you'd be like, well, that elevates it too. But
if they just sneak out of the group, that and those points are significant, then that even adds to the goal, I think. But
They're not going to just sneak out
No,
of here.
of course
though.
they're not.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
James Heff was the one who suggested the Redondo assist to Raul, by the way, on our YouTube channel. And Steve Lane says, Redondo very underrated. A couple of other ones I want to get to. I know you're going to discuss Haaland's goal to James McCullough, but you need to check out Jack Clark's goal for Sunderland last night. Pep's Barca side would be envious of that team play and build-up. So they were 2-0 up at the stage. Their own goalkeeper has the ball and they sweep the pitch left to right. And it's again kind of tap-in-ish.
But slick. Not one of the passes was. They didn't even contemplate on the ball for half a second. It was just flick, go, ball in. The pass for the assist actually for that one where he sweeps it around the back of the defender was very impressive. First touch from the striker, bottom corner.
Should Roy Keane have taken the Sunderland job that time when he had the chance? Without him, like, would he have them playing like this?
I was thinking he should have taken that. Damien suggesting too on YouTube. Beckham's assist to Ronaldo for Real Madrid. Does anyone remember that? It was unbelievable.
Cross.
It was a cross in from just inside his own half. Yeah. Beckham just inside his own half is a familiar sentence. But it was absolutely outrageous. He swung it all the way around.
Great finish by Ronaldo.
The opposition. On his left foot. Left foot of volley. Yeah, that's a great shout by Damien.
Yeah, like you got to love some of the old school. Like the Niall Quinn one does stand out for me, but you maybe for different reasons.
Which Quinny
against Germany? Like but they're such simple assists.
That's just nostalgia.
It is nostalgia.
That's a very basic.
Sorry, Wes Hoolahan's cross, because Wes was the redeemer
against Italy. Euro 2016.
Yeah,
which is what's not talked about much is that Hoolan, like a minute before him, it's an absolute sitter.
Yeah, that's
he was 2-1-1.
That's what makes the assist greater.
He just said.
Did he just say it?
The redeemer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Apologies. I didn't hear redeemer. Sorry, I was just so obsessed with talking about that.
It is a fair point because it was
it's an excellent point I've just made to you that you've just made back to me. I agree. Yes,
concur.
It's working out great.
Yeah.
I can't find that's Ronaldo, Beckham one. Specifically there, but
you can take our word, it was an excellent cross. But see, this is the beautiful thing. I'm glad that we've spoken about the assist for so long.
Okay, one last thing here, right? The Dortmund manager lost the game when he took off his striker and replaced him with the centre half. Goalie was poor as well, says Chris Cal, right? I don't know, those of a certain age who are like Ireland fans remember always Mick McCarthy would take off a striker and put on a midfielder or an extra defender, and you're like, why are we doing that? And then we would concede late and he'd be like, oh, he just couldn't hold it out. And like,
we could have.
Maybe, inviting the opposition, maybe inviting world-class opposition onto you and saying, here, you just have the ball and keep attacking us and we'll do our best to, put our finger in the dike. Yeah. Why would we do that? Why do managers do that?
Yeah, I felt it was strange at the time.
It's tactically smart. It's sophisticated. We're going to batten down the hatches and hope that the storm rages through and we're left standing.
The striker that he took off, the Dortmund manager, I can't remember which one it was, but he was doing a lot of donkey work as well, chasing balls down and doing his own little bit of defending from the front. So it was a strange decision at the time, and hindsight's 2020, lads.
It's not. Hindsight's not 2020.
Well,
anybody who's never watched all football knows that you don't invite the world-class football team on to attack you at home with the crowd cheering and Pep Guardiola on the sideline.
Yeah.
You don't be like, here, you have the ball because you're no good with it.
Not against City. It was a bad move against Man City. It could have worked against, an Aston Villa or one of these.
Well, I mean, I've seen Villa do this my entire life. It's stupid.
Yeah.
It's totally stupid.
Yeah, it was a bit bizarre.
Well, we have a lead now. We're going to defend that. Nothing could ever go wrong there.
We're forgetting that it was a shocker of a game.
They're like the kids in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Well, I'm just going to go out and see where the chainsaw noise is coming from, why my friends haven't come back. There's the Beckham pass. We might tweet some of these a little bit later on. Okay, the other thing is, I think there's a Rorschach test here. Do you have a soul or do you not have a soul? John Stones lorries the ball in. It's this incredible Roberto Carlos-esque curve to the ball, and you're like, boom. Whoa, it's like back into the left.
Yeah.
Yeah? And you're like, nah, shit goalkeeping. You and Robbie Savage, peas in a pod. No football souls.
My dad will attest to this. I said it before Robbie Savage said it on TV. I said, what the hell is the keeper doing there? The strike from Stones was incredible. And it was a little bit Vincent Kompany-esque into the same end of the stadium as well. But... And look, bear in mind the slow motion replays make things look a lot worse, but the keeper's arm is half extended at most. He's like, oh, I can't reach that. It's like when you don't want to touch when you're in the schoolyard and one of the lads big toes it and you're like, I don't really want to touch that because my hand's going to sting for the rest of the day, so I'm not going to touch it.
Is he Superman?
Oh.
Can he curve in the air? Is that what it is? You're asking him like a flip like a fish. He's a little salmon, is he?
My dad actually agreed with you last night. He was like, no, I don't. It was just a good strike and it dipped and curled.
Mr. Hannon, you the man. That's all we're saying.
I still think the keeper could have done better, but if you watch the goal in real time, yeah, it was an incredible strike. Keeper didn't cover himself in glory, I thought.
I like football. That's what can I say. I like watching nice things.
Also beaten at the near post for the Haaland goal.
Yeah, well, that's just shocking. I mean, get him out.
Terrible goalkeeping. Sack him.
I did think he was pretty good at playing over the press.
Yeah.
I mean, if Man United were ever interested in signing a goalkeeper who might be useful for their style of play, he might be the man.
Yeah, look, the Stones goal was fantastic. The keeper, slow motion didn't cover him in glory. I think the best part of last night, Ger, was Phil Foden's haircut. If anyone hasn't seen this, we'll try and get an image up on screen. You'll see
There
it
it is there, yeah.
The number 40. It kind of looks like a small one as well, so he looks like a bit of a snooker fan with the 147.
Oh, maybe he is like a sneaky snooker fan.
I actually think, that is commitment to your squad number. It would be proper commitment, wouldn't it, if you got the number 47 tattooed on you, which obviously I have done. So
that's why you noticed it.
I was like, Jesus,
You're a Phil Foden fan now, it turns out.
I've obviously explained on the show before that this is the North.
No, he's a Phil Foden fan. And he's got the 0 in front, so you know.
I just happen to also have 47. But if Foden was ready to commit, he'd have got it tattooed and not just shaved it. Hair grows back and you can shave off the 47. You can't. Well, you can obviously get rid of a tattoo, but it's a very arduous and painful process. So I think if he was really committed to his squad number, he'd have got a tattoo somewhere on his wrist,
On his head.
maybe. Yeah. So Phil.
What if they change his number though? You know.
Well, that's the issue. Yeah.
What number would he be? You know, is he not really a 10? Is he? Is he an 8? Is he a?
Yeah.
Is he an 8.5? Is he a 9.5? Is he? Who knows?
I'd love to hear what Graham Souness thinks about the shaved head and getting your number. I'd say John Giles would have opinions on it maybe tonight as well.
OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. They could use one of the Gillette razors to shave it off. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock this morning. Sam Lee's going to talk to us about Manchester City in 2 minutes. We've got Declan Bonner, the ex-Donegal manager now, going to talk to us about his time in charge of the Donegal footballers. We'll bring in the sports pages and John Duggan around about 8:35. Our edition this week of You Had to Be There is the Irish Independent rugby correspondent Rory O'Connor, and then we'll play some highlights from Wednesday Night Rugby after the Emerging Ireland squad was named yesterday. It's Liam Toland and Rory O'Connor on that one, actually, talking about that. So it is 7:52. We've got Sam Lee with us. Sam, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, very well, thanks.
I'm saying the goal is one of the best goals I've ever seen. That there's kind of we're becoming a little bit too accustomed to the level of genius that we're seeing, but it's that good. That finish, we shouldn't take it for granted. He's a superhero, so he can do that. We should be mouth agape at that, I think.
Yeah, I actually did take it for granted a bit. It's only like waking up again this morning and looking at the reaction to it and his interviews and things, and just thinking, yeah, that was a special goal. He has tried it a few times recently. I think against Sevilla last week. I remember speaking to people who've been at the game, and with the fans, and they were like, "Why did he try and kick it that time when he could have headed it?" And I was like, yeah, "He does that a lot." And I think he did it in the Community Shield as well, that famous game, semi-famous game, where people were like, "Oh, what's going on with him?" So yeah, he's got it in his locker, you could say. And afterwards, Guardiola said it reminded him of a goal that Johan Cruyff scored against Atletico Madrid. He said Guardiola said his dear friend Ibrahimovic had that ability to put his foot on the ceiling and be elastic, and Haaland is the same. I mean, the thing with Haaland is, in terms of being mouth agape, when he was young, he wasn't big, he wasn't massive, but he was a great finisher because he had the right instincts, he had the right movements. He knew how to get the advantage over bigger, more physical defenders purely through his movement and positioning and the timing of his runs. And then obviously he became massive, and not just that, massive and fast, unbelievably fast, but not just that, as we saw last night. He does have this incredible elasticity. So it's not just bursting away from defenders and finding the space and the right timing, but if the ball is 6 feet in the air, he doesn't necessarily have to head it, which is incredible, and it does make him quite the sight. And yeah, 13 goals in 8 games.
It's all about
I mean, I knew he'd score lots of goals, but I didn't think he'd get this many.
It's all about the assist, though,
quickly.
Sam, isn't it? I mean, we've been having this conversation this morning. It's all about the Cancelo assist, surely.
Yeah, but then it's one of those where if the ball's 6 feet in the air, is it perfect? But then he could have just headed it, I suppose. So, but yeah, that Cancelo assist. Talking about things that people try often, Cancelo, he does like to do that increasingly. It was funny actually because whenever Bernardo Silva passed him the ball, I mean, I'm sure this was just the best pass in the situation, but he was always giving it to him on his right foot. So he'd have to curl it inwards, like more traditionally, with his toes, with his instep, that kind of thing. But he got the ball from Nathan Ake in a load of space, and he thought, okay, well, Bernardo's not forced me to use the inside of my foot now, so I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to use the outside of the foot, which he did in that game against Everton last season for the Raheem Sterling goal. He did it in the build-up to another Haaland goal against Forest, I think 2 weeks ago. Yeah, he loves doing that, and it's one of those, isn't it? When people say, oh, people are showing off with back heels or whatever it may be, sometimes it's just the best option. Sometimes it's the most effective method of getting the ball to where you want it to go. I think with Cancelo, he's so adept at doing that, he can do it. It's not showboating, just crack on.
There was a bit where Bernardo Silva looked like he was able to walk on the ball as well, where he just ran into the ball and the ball stopped and then he flicked it. Yeah, it was. There was just a level that they brought the game to, maybe because they were inspired to bring the game to it by Dortmund. We were talking earlier about, does the arrival of Haaland guarantee a Champions League? And does it, maybe if they win 3 out of the next 4, you can say, yeah, well, it turns out it did. And until they do it, you can't say they've done it. But I did think the early stages in the game, there was a bit of a template for what you need to do against City. That Dortmund were really, 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 really good. And that hopefully the rest of Europe, from a competitive standpoint, is looking at that going, okay, well, let's put it up to City in the way that Dortmund did. And let's see if a moment of absolute sublime genius is going to separate them from us at the end. Am I right? Is there something specifically in that first half with the energy and the hunting in packs and the discipline, and just even the street smarts to drop when they needed to drop from the Dortmund defence and midfield, that will give Pep a challenge as the season progresses?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Normally it's in the Premier League, and it'd be managers of clubs that aren't expected to beat City, and they'll say, look, you need City to have an off day, and we need to play to our absolute maximum to have any chance. And that's pretty much what happened last night, but City still won anyway. City were terrible for definitely an hour. I've never been bored at a City match before. I've sat there plenty of times, over 7 years, and thought, they're not playing well today. This isn't very good. It's not quite clicking. But I've never been bored, I don't think, or not for a long time. But the first half was terrible. They were no good. They didn't really improve until about the hour mark when the subs came on, and then they got a bit better. But it was only until Stones flashed one in from 20 yards that they actually sparked the fight back. So they weren't very good. But yes, they still won. In terms of Dortmund's approach, they were very good. I'm not saying it was similar to Atletico Madrid's, because Atletico Madrid back in April were very deep. Didn't really counter-attack at all until part of the second half. But that, being compact, denying those spaces between, the defence and the midfield, so De Bruyne and Gundogan can't drop in and get on the ball. Yeah, those kind of ways, they do frustrate City. They'll frustrate anybody, defending in a low block. And then if you counter-attack with pace, if PSG can do that, be that disciplined, but then counter-attack with Mbappe and Neymar and Messi, then it's so much harder than even, playing against... West Ham are a good counter-attacking team. Leicester are a better counter-attacking team, when Leicester are playing well. But then if you add in the best players in the world on the break who aren't just fast and know how to counter, but have got high individual quality, that's where you start to get issues. Real Madrid could do it as well with their pace. So there are ways. But I think the thing with City is it's just relentless. Like against Atletico Madrid in the game at the Etihad, when they defended with a 5-5 formation, chances were so hard to come by, but City will just keep going. They will just keep doing the right things until something tells. And they've started adding this edge to their game in the last couple of months, going back to the last couple of games of last season, where if they're behind, they can keep going and going and going and get the goals they need. And by that point, the momentum is kind of against you, and you're kicking the ball out, you're doing the right things as a defensive side, but it just keeps coming back. There are going to be teams that could be competitive against City. There will be teams that give them problems. And, as we saw with the Real Madrid tie last season, which I think City deserved to win over the two legs, they didn't. And I know that's kind of elite level Champions League Real Madrid magic. So maybe it's not something that every team can replicate. But look, if City play Liverpool over two legs, you can see Liverpool shading it. They've gone out against Tottenham in recent years, Lyon. I'd say City are better than they were then, now. And they've got Haaland as well. But you talked about guarantee the Champions League. There aren't no guarantees in football, as you know. And until City do win the Champions League, it's something they have to overcome, because when they got to the final, they were massively overawed by the experience. And then, they found out that even when they were close to doing it again, there's still teams like Real Madrid. So, they weren't good enough last night, even though they won, to start thinking it's going to be that easy. I wouldn't have thought.
Sam, I think I recall you speaking before about Jack Grealish and Riyad Mahrez slowing the game down for City sometimes when they get on the ball. It was quite obvious last night. It's certainly in the early portions of the game as well. And I'll almost go and say Mahrez looked like maybe there was a lack of effort at points during the match as well. Like, what do you do with those two players now? Is it an extended run on the bench is the only solution? Because Grealish particularly has been, well, he hasn't been the Grealish that City would have hoped for.
Grealish is the thing that Mahrez first. Mahrez has been here for years, and he's been a really good player for City. So if he drops below that level, you can say, okay, what's going on there? And he has dropped below that level. But at the start of last season, he couldn't get a game for love nor money, really. But he played in the Champions League, and I think he got 5 goals in 6 games in the group stage. But obviously, he's not had that kind of saviour this time. Grealish, first season is always about adapting. I think every single Guardiola forward, even midfielder, even some of the defenders, have needed a year to settle in. He's just coming back off an injury. Played well enough, bright enough against Sevilla last week. And then, obviously last night you're hoping for him to build on that, and you're hoping for him to be this kind of whirlwind maverick talent that he was at Aston Villa. And, that is still the goal. They still want him to get more goals, get more assists, be more decisive. Last night he didn't have a great game. In terms of what to do with him, a run on the bench, I think both of them, you need to kind of play them into form. And there'll be enough games after the international break to rotate for that. But again, look, they were charged with doing a lot last night. They were charged with getting the play going individually, and they didn't do it. They didn't have good games. But just nothing really worked last night. Inverting wingers, but without any kind of natural width. Because, Cancelo's inclined to come inside on his right foot. John Stones isn't going to get forward and provide that kind of threat from right back. The two centre-backs are not the best ball-playing centre-backs at City. Gundogan and De Bruyne couldn't get on the ball. Like, nobody could really get things going. And then, I don't know, when Foden and Bernardo and Alvarez came on, they certainly injected pace and energy, but at the same time, City needed pace and energy because they were losing. They only had one option. It was, okay, we need to up this. So, in terms of slowing the game down, that is an important thing. But I think last night it was too slow. And the good thing about the subs was they couldn't just play too fast. It wasn't just about go on and run around and inject loads of energy into it. Because if City had suddenly been too direct and started trying to find Haaland all the time, or trying to beat men individually with Foden and Alvarez, then it would have played into Dortmund's hand and they would have had problems on the counter-attack. So I think it showed that slowing the game down is good. But last night was too slow as a function of the whole team, I think. The good thing about the subs was they didn't put too much speed and energy into it. And on Grealish, I still think it's early days. He has been injured this season. So maybe I'm running out of time to say the second season will be better. But he's doing a lot of things that Guardiola needs. That slowing the game down is not something that a lot of people would appreciate. Nobody says, that Jack Grealish is amazing, isn't it? He slows the game down. And nobody's ever going to say that. But it's important for Guardiola. Nobody's ever going to say, Jack Grealish is really good, isn't he? Because he sucks other men to him and then he gives the ball to Rodri. Nobody cares. But Guardiola cares, and it is important. I would like to think that as we go through this second season, he will be much better. And I'm still going to say it's early days because we're what, 13 games in? No, maybe less.
So
I'm counting Haaland's goals there, so less. But Grealish, he hasn't had that many because he's been injured, so we'll see.
Is the ambition still that he will do some of the things that he was good at Villa and also do other things in the Guardiola system? Because just to give you a flavour of the comments, it's like, oh, they've turned him into a player who's the opposite of what he was at Villa. Why are they stopping him doing the things he was good at? And that's like a view that's definitely out there from people who are watching going, you know, it would be unusual for you to buy something that you know is really good and then ask him to do something entirely different. What they're saying is they can get him to do something different and layer on the stuff that he was capable of in the first place.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's never going to be the Villa player because, you know, he got, I can't remember if this is a stat or it was something like this, but when he played for Villa, obviously he had like a high percentage of the touches in their attacks because they would look for him and they would find it. But obviously at City, they look for him at the right moment. And not normally at City, they build up down the left-hand side just so they can switch it to the right-hand side. So Mahrez or whoever is in loads of space. So that's what I mean about Grealish getting the ball and men coming to him. And then he gives it to Ruaidhri or he gives it back to Cancelo and they put it to the other side. That's exactly what he's supposed to do. So those things, you know, he's not going to have as much of the ball as he did at Villa because it's just a completely different thing. You know, there's not loads of space to run into. There's not loads of transitions when you play for City. It is a different game. He does have to adapt. So, and he is doing those things which are important to Guardiola. And, you know, in terms of slowing the game down, last night was a bad example because they were very slow and they weren't very good at all. But there have been games where they have needed to slow the game down and he would have been very useful. Like the Newcastle game, like the Villa game when they drew. But that's not to say, oh no, he's definitely been worth 100 million because he's doing that. They do want him, you know, the coaching staff, Grealish himself, they do want him to take on men, be more effective, be more aggressive, to get the goals, to create more chances, or, you know, just be more decisive. They do want that, and that is the process. But look, everyone was saying that about Mahrez. Everyone was saying they didn't need this player. He plays in a counter-attacking team at Leicester. It's a different style. He's too individualistic. It's not going to work. You know, he's had a couple of seasons of being City's top goal scorer. He's been a really important part of the team. Nobody really questions his, nobody questions his signing anymore. Nobody questions if he was worth the money. I think part of the problem with Grealish, obviously, was 100 million. If he was 60 million, there wouldn't be quite that scrutiny. I get that. But look, nobody really questions the Mahrez thing anymore. No, at the time when they signed Sane, everyone was like, oh, we should have bought a defender instead. Then he won Young Player of the Year the next season. Bernardo didn't do a lot in his first season. He's been one of City's best ever players, best players of this Guardiola era. Nobody hits the ground running when you come in and play up front for Guardiola. There's always adaptation. And yeah, we're seeing that. But yeah, he does have to do more for sure. But there is stuff that is being underappreciated because, just because he's doing stuff differently to Villa doesn't mean it's no good. But I get it. Everyone wants to see him beat players because he is really exciting when he does that. And it is exciting when he goes past a man and makes something magic happen. But that's not what he's got to do all the time. It's just not how it is.
Again, the comments are coming in asking about has he taken on a fullback? Asks Bruce Robbo on the outside once. Is he allowed to take on fullbacks on the outside? Is that like not the plan? As you say, there's a very specific plan where you create an overload on one side, put pressure on the defence, and then switch it really quickly, and loads of goals come off that. Whereas actually, if he beats a man on the outside, nobody else is in position, and then he's done this thing on his own, and everybody's like, well, that's very good, but ultimately you look great, and there's going to be a TikTok of that, but nobody else is in situ.
I'm trying to think, he'll carry the ball, rather than beat a man on the outside, I'm trying to think. In my mind's eye, I'm thinking more, he'll carry it down towards the corner flag, but then because, the other team are generally set up deep, there'll be the fullback, there might be one of the three centre-backs or a midfielder in there, and it's kind of 2 against 1. And we know Grealish attracts players. So in my mind's eye, he's carrying the ball down towards the corner flag, and then he's coming back, and then he's giving it to Ruaidhri or Cancelo for the switch. I'm trying to think as well, it just seems like the most profitable way in terms of generating something is to carry it inside. Guardiola loves that kind of inverted winger threat where you go inside towards the goal. We've seen Sterling do it. Try and curl one in from the edge of the box. Mahrez does it as well, that kind of thing. But the thing is, with Mahrez or whoever plays on the right, they've got the option of somebody kind of either overlapping or underlapping them to get to the byline. And then, like the goal against Sevilla last week, the first Haaland goal, where Foden played the ball in behind to De Bruyne. De Bruyne was running through that inside channel, and all he had to do was square it across to Haaland. They look for that all the time, but they don't really do that so much on the left. So in terms of him having to beat a man on the outside, look, if it was like a transition and he had space to run into, he could easily run around him, get around the man that way, and then come back inside towards the goal. But I think when you're up against a defence that's set, You go in towards the goal to make things happen. If you go outside, there's not really those people there set up to profit the attack. There's not that attacking structure there, I don't think, and he's not. I think if they believed he was capable, or it was like a good bet for him to get to the line and cut the ball back with his left foot for somebody to score a tap in, I'm sure they would ask him to do it more often.
Yeah.
But the way the attacks are structured, I'm sure it's just, well, no, you do this. You go inside, or you give it back to somebody else to pass it over to the other side. If he had more of the transitions, I'm sure it'd look much more like the people we expect him to be, the player we expect him to be.
Yeah, and look, maybe as Europe goes on and they play better teams who have more of the ball against them, there might be more opportunity for that to happen. Can I just ask you about what's going on with Ruben Diaz? Because he looked like the standout centre-back in English football over the last 2 or 3 seasons, and seems to be fit, but wasn't playing last night, even though 3 centre-backs did play in the back 4. Has there been a falling out? Is form dipped? Is he coming back from injuries or something that I'm just unaware of?
Some City fans have been saying that he's not had a great start to the season. I can't say I've noticed anything too alarming. There was a game recently, and with the games being cancelled, I can't remember which one it was. But he was really good. I don't know. Guardiola said yesterday he had to pick the team with the Wolves game in mind, and that's this is the thing when we talk about individuals in the system. Last night, it was one of those teams where it just didn't quite fit together as pieces. I was said about the defenders not being the best on the ball, and the fullbacks not really offering any kind of width. The wingers not really offering any kind of width. It didn't really add up until they changed the dynamic with the subs and needing a goal. But yeah, there was an element of picking the team with Wolves in mind, and I wonder if Diaz not playing was part of that. Giving minutes to Ake because he's been good at the start of the season, and then he got injured. Giving minutes to Akanji to bed him in case they need him. Maybe it'll be Akanji and Ake at Wolves. I doubt. I can't say for sure, but I doubt very much there's been a falling out. He's like the most kind of professional up at dawn players in the whole squad. No injury as far as I know. It's rotation, I guess.
Akanji's an interesting one, Sam, because I think when he arrived, he was quite clear and confident in pointing out he doesn't want to be a 5th choice right back or centre back for City. And even he was quite heavily criticised at Dortmund for some performances in seasons where they kind of pushed Bayern but didn't quite get there. I thought he was quite reading some of the papers this morning before we came on air, and he was getting ratings of 5 out of 10 and 6 out of 10. I actually thought he was maybe a little bit good, better than that, and competent at the very least last night. He's probably put his hand up as someone who can certainly be an option for Pep in that position.
Yeah, for sure. So he made a solid enough debut at Sevilla last week. Again, last night the first half was just so bad. The only kind of bright spot that I thought was just Akanji was solid enough. He's not especially bright in his passing so far. Guardiola says he can break the lines like Laporte, which would be great. He hasn't done it so far, but he's just bedding in. Maybe a bit tentative. There wasn't the option to really pass to anybody in those line breaking passes last night anyway, because of the things we've already mentioned. But no, I thought he was good. I think Bellingham was his man for the goal, and he kind of went napping a bit. So maybe that explains. Well, it probably does explain the low marking, because if you're only if you're trying to write a million things live and you're looking up every now and again, you're not going to see him too much until he's not great for the goal. But no, overall, I thought he was very solid, and like I said, City were bad for an hour. He was one of the bright spots for sure. And yeah, he just looked like an option, but a surprise signing. City don't normally make late moves in the market. His name hadn't been around at all. Nobody was expecting it, and he come in, and again, you don't really know what to expect. You think he's going to be 5th choice, but like you say, he's not planning that. I don't think anybody would plan that when you go to a new club. And yeah, with the injury problems they've got, he's got an opportunity there. And so far, playing in the 2 Champions League games, yeah, I think he's been good. And I get the lower rating because of it wasn't great for the goal, but he was one of City's best performers over the 90 minutes last night, which isn't saying a great deal, to be fair, but he was good.
Very briefly, Sam, the Todd Bowley idea for an All-Star game, North versus South, are you looking forward to covering this game as a Man City correspondent?
I don't mind it. I know everyone hates American suggestions of our things, Like, Klopp's right. When would you play it? And the idea that it would raise 200 million or, it's similar, and the idea that they would then give that money to the Football League is just laughable. It's not going to happen. But as a spectacle, yeah, why not? I'd see it. I mean, it's not practical whatsoever. But would I be looking forward to seeing it? Yeah, I'd watch that. I think people are suggesting it as an alternative to the Community Shield, which again still probably doesn't work because nobody wants to give away their players when you're just about to start the season for a mad game that nobody's going to care about. But yeah, I'd go to it. And look, don't tell me you wouldn't watch it.
Maybe the week between the end of the season and the Champions League final, so none of the players involved in the Champions League are playing, but everybody else is, either about to head off to the beach.
I'll tell you what, we've got a spare week between the World Cup final and Boxing Day. They can move the Carabao Cup and they can do it then. That'll be fine.
Sam, good stuff. Great to have you with us. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Sam Lee from The Athletic there, covering Manchester City. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now, the 7-day Listowel Harvest Festival starts this Sunday and marks the start of the jump season officially. I spent some time with Davy Russell recently, one of Ireland's most talented national hunt jockeys, in his hometown of Youghal. It was the hottest day of the year that day, which turns out good weather leads to a lot of photogenic shots of beautiful West Cork.
Yeah, I mean, I was down in West Cork for the first time recently. I had never actually been to County Cork. Colin outside won't be too happy to hear that, but it took me to almost 30 years of age to get down there. What a lovely part of the world.
Very, very nice. So we had a chat about all things racing and his unique competitor's mindset. We're going to put the full podcast up available. The hashtag is Every Racing Moment. This is just a snippet of the chat. The full thing's going to be available very soon, and we'll be back afterwards with Declan Bonner talking about his time in charge for the second time of Donegal. Enjoy this.
OTB. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the ball.
Yeah, the Preston board didn't want to be the board who sacked Bobby Charlton. So they sort of contrived the situation to force him to resign by selling a player called John Bird to Newcastle. It's a slightly bonkers conspiracy. I mean, it almost feels like a sitcom.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
I grew up here. This is where I was born. I had a brilliant upbringing here. All I wanted to be was ride horses. That's all I wanted to do. And then I wanted to ride a winner, and I done that. And then I wanted to be champion point-to-point rider, champion novice rider, and I done that. And then I wanted to be champion senior rider, and then I wanted to turn professional, and I wanted to ride in a Grand National. I dreamt about winning Grand Nationals. I dreamt of, and lucky for me, I've been able to live that dream and ride the roller coaster. I'm 43 now. I've put everything into being a jockey. I've absolutely emptied the tank. It is the best game in the world, and a certain art in able to walk out to a field, throw a bridle on a horse, just saddle and bridle on a horse and jump up on his back and take off galloping. It's a lovely thing to be able to do. I wouldn't have done anything else, and I loved it. Every minute of it. Every single minute of it, I loved it being a jockey. I just lived the dream.
Celebrate European Week of Sport this September at the Be Active Festival, an action-packed day out for the whole family at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Come and try new sports, fitness challenges and skill tests at Ireland's biggest sporting festival. Meet sporting legends, check out the Inflatable Zone, Village Food Market and much more. There's something for everyone at the Be Active Festival, Saturday, September 24th at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Book your tickets now at beactivefestival.ie.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good. But this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It's the off-season of Intercounty GAA, as we all know, in the split season, and it gives us an opportunity to talk to some of the managers who finished up, and we'll start talking to some of the new managers over the coming weeks as well. But I'm delighted to say the former Donegal football manager, Declan Bonner, is with us. Declan, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Good morning, how are you? Yeah, good form now, not bad.
Have you made peace with the fact that you're the former Donegal manager?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. No, listen, enjoying my time away now. Maybe come to winter nights again, and maybe a little or nothing to do, you might want to get back out again. But no, at the minute, no, it's great, to be quite honest. Nice to get the break.
Did you know you were going to finish up this year at the start of the year? Was that always part of your plan, did you think?
Yeah, it was, to be quite honest. Yeah, we wanted to finish on a high, and we didn't get that opportunity. We got an opportunity, we didn't take it. But listen, yeah, it was a testing couple of years, to be quite honest. But ultimately, we came up short this year. The Ulster final, and especially the last 15-20 minutes of that was disappointing. The fact that we didn't go on to win it. So yeah, disappointing end to the campaign. But yeah, listen, it was enjoyable. It was testing. There was a lot of, over the 5 years, a lot of things happened. But yeah, it was an exciting journey, quite honest.
What was the most testing part now when you're looking back on it, going, Jesus, I can't believe we came through that?
Yeah, I suppose, listen, when I came in 2017, the first championship was 2018, 2019, and we went back to back with both Ulster championships. Probably, yeah, naturally, the most testing time for everyone would have been the March 2020 when everything shut down. And that to me was a real testing period, to be quite honest. We felt we managed it okay. There was a lot of Zoom calls. We didn't have little or no interaction with players in terms of getting on the pitch. But once we got back in, I felt we were back playing reasonably well, and we came unstuck then in the Ulster final. And I think it was difficult from then on, to be quite honest. That was a big defeat for us against Cavan in the Ulster final 2020.
Because you were so heavily favoured, because you felt like there was a big opportunity, over the next couple of weeks after that, if you got through to... those winter games, certainly that Dublin team seemed more beatable than in the high summer when they were doing their 5 in a row, which ultimately becomes the 6 after COVID. Was it that there was an opportunity lost there that you couldn't get back?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. We actually played Tyrone and Armagh, and Tyrone first round in 2020. That was probably played in around September, heavy conditions. We played at Armagh in Breffni Park, and the game performed really, really well. We won the game. The game was over at half time. We got to the Ulster final, and again, it was surreal. No crowds. The game wasn't in Clones. It was played on a November dark evening in the athletic grounds. That's not taken away from Cavan. Cavan deserved their victory on tonight. There was a huge opportunity, no doubt about that there. Huge opportunity for us. We had never gone 3 in a row in Ulster, and also a real opportunity to have an All-Ireland semi-final slot. So there was a lot at stake, and for one reason or another, we had enough ball in that game, and we didn't take our opportunities. And Cavan got that late goal, and listen, that's where championships are won and lost on those small margins, and we come up short that evening.
The same thing happened to Kerry, exact same thing happened to Kerry against Cork, where, the team from the lower division catches them in the very last minute of the game, and there's no time to get back, and there's no back door, and it really felt like that Donegal team, as you say, because the semi-final was such a brilliant performance that you were ready to put it up to Dublin.
Yeah, listen, exactly. We felt we were very, very close, over that period. And, even going into the 2021 campaign, even though we found it, it was slightly, we had a reasonable league campaign. The league campaign was split into 2 groups. So we had Tyrone, Armagh and Monaghan was a mini Ulster championship, and we came out on top of that there. And, we played, I think, down the first round of the championship in 21, and then we lost to Tyrone. And a match that we were just about to take control of. We went 2 points up, and we had an opportunity. We missed a penalty, and then Michael got sent off a couple of minutes after that, and we didn't get back. And ultimately, Tyrone went on to win the All-Ireland in 2021. So, yeah, those are the margins. And as I say, this year, in terms of the campaign, we'd beaten Armagh in the last league game in O'Donnell Park, a venue that we hadn't won in for a long, long time. And we remain Division 1 football for 2023. and beat Armagh in a really good performance, first round of the championship, beat Cav in semi-final. And we knew Derry had been, momentum. Derry had been gathering momentum. I'd watched them against Tyrone, against Monaghan, and we went in a particular way. And I felt, even if I had to go back out tomorrow morning and play that game, I would do the exact same thing. We felt this game was going to go down to the wire. Going into that last quarter, we went 2 points up, and to me, that's where the major disappointment lay, that we didn't go on to win that game, and that's a huge disappointment because that game was there to be won at that stage, and we just didn't grasp it.
Was there frustration in that, Declan? Especially, I think a lot of people in the analysis immediately after that game were sort of like, it was quite cagey. Neither team wanted to really push on and obviously concede a point. Hindsight, as we've been saying already this morning, is 2020, but there must be frustration in those last few minutes especially.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Huge frustration. We had set out to play when I took over it, played a lot of attacking football, and when we look back at it, we still had the nucleus of a strong defensive unit with the likes of Anthony Thompson, Leo McClune, Paddy McGrath, Neil McGee were all part of that defensive unit. And gradually, as those guys moved away, we probably found it difficult to replace those type of defenders. And ultimately, we had to balance our game in terms of what our attack was going to look like and what our defensive shape was going to look like. And watching Derry, Derry were a counter-attacking team, and that's where they really hurt Tyrone and Monaghan and really blew those teams away and those championship games. So we felt that we were, if we could match that and mirror that going into it and be in that game, going in that final stage to get our noses in front, that we would kick on. And that was a disappointment that we didn't kick on, because that game was there to be won at that stage, and we didn't take it,
We spoke, Declan, to Jack Cooney, the outgoing Westmeath manager, on the show recently, and he was talking about the stresses of inter-county management and how high profile it is, I guess, compared to being involved in the club game. Like, did you find that yourself, that that's maybe one of the reasons why you're stepping away, that it's quite a goldfish bowl and a lot of high pressure and high focus for such a long time of the year?
Sorry, yeah, listen, it is, no doubt, but it's not a pressure. It's different than when I was back in 20 years ago. I took the first time I was only coming out of retirement a couple of months, and I took the job in 1997 and took them through to the millennium, through to 2000. So different time, different setups, different backups. The social media was not an issue, which it has now become. And you can see, in terms of trying to fill these posts at the moment, you have the top 8 teams in the country: Donegal, Roscommon, and Monaghan still looking for managers and find it very, very difficult to get anyone to come in. Yeah, listen, I knew what was ahead of me when I came in. I've been in the position in terms of coming through the minors and under 21s for 5 years, coming into seniors, and I knew exactly what was ahead of me. And ultimately, to manage your county, to play for your county, huge honour, and delighted to have been afforded that opportunity. And listen, it is a huge commitment, there's no doubt. You've got to get that balance right between your work commitment, your family commitment, and inter-county manager, which is a huge job and a huge commitment.
Is that difficult?
Yeah, it can be. You need a lot of understanding people, to be quite honest. You need a very understanding family, number one, which is ultimately where you end up going back every evening, and you have to get that timing right, and ultimately your work. If your work's suffering, then that's going to be an issue. But luckily, I've been afforded the opportunity from my employees to go out and do this job, which it was a big undertaking, but also, as I said, a huge honour, to be quite honest. And for any ambitious young manager out there that wants to get at it, it's it's a huge commitment. But again, once you're in that, it is a goldfish bowl. There's no doubt about that. There, you're really locked into it, and the time and the hours that you spend, you don't really think about it.
You touched on social media there, Declan, and like that is and I think it's been said as well, that's one of the reasons why the Donegal search for a new manager has been low key, or at least off the record, and not many names are coming up officially. Is that something you find yourself as well, the abuse on social media, Twitter and Instagram and all the rest? It's gotten worse in the last number of years.
Yeah, there's no doubt it has, and there's people that just, it doesn't matter if it's Gaelic football, it could be Donegal GA this week, it could be Finn Harps next week, it could be the national soccer team, it could be anything at all. These guys are just sitting back I don't think they have too much to do, to be quite honest. I think a lot of these just sit in the house on their keyboards day in, day out to see who's the next attack. But listen, I don't, it's easy to probably say I don't get involved in that space. I don't, but I still have a lot of family. If my children are, at that age, they're all into that. And, it does probably have an effect to a degree. But as I say, it goes over my head, to be quite honest. But, and you do need to have a certain personality about you if you're going into inter-county management, that you've got to switch off and switch away from that.
I know Rory Kavanagh and Martin McHugh's names particularly have been mentioned in Donegal in the last couple of weeks in terms of the successor to yourself. Like, is this going to be an Alex Ferguson case where you get to anoint your successor with a sword?
No, listen, I think there's a great group of players there, to be quite honest. They're absolutely outstanding group of players. And, I think it's important that we do get the right person in there, whether that takes another couple of weeks or a couple of months, where we've got to get someone in now to make sure that, these guys they're in Division 1. To me, that we're still a top 4 or 5 team, and it's about trying to push on now. And, as I said before, it's an attractive job, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, it brings its pressures and its commitments, but, it's a huge opportunity for somebody to come in and take it on.
Can I just ask you to go back to the impact of the Cavan game? Do you feel like that had an impact in the last 10-15 minutes of the game against Derry, that there's actually a little bit of a psychological hangover when you go through the trauma of losing an Ulster final that way, that you kind of you revert to your shell a little bit, as opposed to thinking, oh look, this is our opportunity here, all we've got to do now is play to our best? Because that, it seems like the frustration was the game was there to be won, but you couldn't go and do it, even though you'd set the team up in a way to put yourselves in that situation. So I'm wondering, can you draw a line from the fallout of the Cavan game?
It's very difficult because, we've spoken about it at actually it would have come up, over the last couple of years. Did we get over it? It's very difficult. Probably the answer lies the fact that we didn't go on to win that, and you can still harp back, had it a real psychological effect, and probably it did have to a degree. There's no doubt about it. I can safely say that. At that stage we probably looked like a team. Instead of when we went 2 points up that we didn't kick on, that maybe that fear of losing, instead of just going out to win that game. Maybe that's easy saying now, but that's probably how I felt. After the game, but it was. There's no doubt. It was a huge disappointment. No, absolutely.
And so then the draw happens, and you've got Armagh again, and I'm sure everybody's just like, oh my God, we're sick of the sight of these lads. We've already beaten them twice this year. To beat a team a third time, it's going to be tricky. Was it just very difficult to recover from the defeat against Derry? Is that why you weren't able to perform the way you were able to perform against Armagh earlier? And also the fact that Armagh was obviously a much better team coming through the qualifiers.
It's always just, the days after a provincial championship final defeat, it's very, very disappointing. We took I think we went back on a Thursday night, and in fairness to the lads, we trained that Thursday, and then we took the weekend, trained the weekend and got ready for the challenge of Armagh. And I felt going into the Armagh game, even though we got off to a bad start, that we probably played our best football in 2022 for the next 20, 23, 24 minutes. I think we tagged on with 9 scores, playing the football that we knew we were capable of playing, getting our kickouts away between mid-range, long-range, getting long-range scores. Kieran Thompson, Michael Langan, Michael Murphy, all getting good long-range scores. We went into it, I think, 3 or 4 point lead. And we got done by just a couple of moments of madness, and those sort of moments that we don't seem to recover from. And we gave away a penalty. Sean got a black card, and ultimately, from being, I think, 3-4 points up, we came in at half time with 3 points down, and it was again, it was just difficult in the second half. But Armagh went on, and as I said, Armagh were gaining momentum also, and were very, very unlucky not to get over the line against Galway.
It's interesting looking on at Gaelic games at the minute, Declan, and the extra ingredient in terms of coaching setup that teams need. Like, you look at Kieran Donaghy going in at Armagh, and Paddy Talley with Kerry, and look, you had Stephen Rochford with you up in Donegal for the last couple of years, and he's obviously gone in now into the Mayo coaching ticket with Kevin McStay. Like, what did you see from being up close with Stephen that maybe he's going to bring now into the Mayo setup under Kevin?
Yeah, listen, Stephen's a quality coach, and hugely committed to whatever job he goes into. Stephen lives on the Galway border in Ballinrobe, and it's almost a 3-hour trek from there to go to Convoy 3 to 4 days a week, and probably count on the one hand maybe the sessions he missed over the 4 years, and hugely committed and hugely organised, and I think it'll work well with Kevin McStay. I think he relishes the coaching role. I think there's a differential now between being team manager and the coaches. Before this, the team manager would have done a lot of the coaching also, but that day's gone now, to be quite honest, because there's so much other stuff going on. But I think he relishes the coaching aspect, and he's top quality.
He's obviously jumped straight back in from one role to the next. Like, is your plan now to kind of take that break? Like, there's obviously you mentioned the Monaghan and Roscommon vacancies. Like, there's nothing floating your boat at the minute. You wouldn't. You'd have no problem taking over another Ulster team, perhaps.
Not at the minute anyway.
As a Monaghan man here, I'm putting a call out, Declan. We're desperate for someone. So.
Listen here, my plan is to take the year out, to be quite honest. I'll do things now that I haven't done over the past 5 years, but I know maybe coming to next season that itch his feet again and maybe come back and do something. But listen, I'll see what happens. I'm still heavily involved in the club here. I'm chairman of the club here this last eight years also, and we're getting ready to play a quarter final of a junior championship match the weekend on Saturday. So looking forward to that there and taking the odd session with the club. So enjoying that, and listen, it's nice just to get the break away from it, to be quite honest.
I know you were in goals, I think, for your club at one point last year.
The odd session / playing a little bit.
Is that
no? I think that day's definitely gone. But no, listen, enjoyed it. If we were stuck again, I would step in. It's a small club, and we're working on again a very small pool of players. At that stage, whatever I think I ended up in nets 2 years ago in a junior championship, a couple of matches because. Both keepers had gone, and I stood in for a number of matches. But listen, nothing beats playing, but those days are well behind me now at this stage.
One last thing, the split season is something that's up for debate. This is the first full year of it properly, and I think maybe we need to make our mind up at the end of it. But a lot of people are saying that we're starting to see some negatives. Maybe if the inter-county season was extended for an extra 4 or 6 weeks, that might change things. What's your view on it as somebody who's been at the coalface of it now over the last number of years?
The question always comes up, but it's trying to get that balance right, because as I say, I'm heavily involved in the club and I understand the club perspective, but I just do feel that the season's finished far too early, to be quite honest. We had really good weather over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, and no inter-county matches. This is the showcase. These are the teams and the weather where you want to go out and watch games and televised games. Yeah, we had all that back in May, June, but the weather again, it's always fairly iffy. We started off our campaign last year. If you go back we would have went back into pre-season sometime in November, December, horrendous conditions, and then you start your National League campaign, and we went up to play Mayo and Markovitz Park. And the weather was absolutely, it was horrendous. I think TG Cahir had real difficulty trying to get control of the camera. And, it's not a great sight for, watching your Premier game and top teams involved. And we were down to Kerry the exact same. There was a gale force 1 blown that day. It was absolutely horrendous. So football in January is just an absolute washout, to be quite honest. I think the season needs to go back and start a league sometime in February and maybe extend it 4 to 6 weeks, which I think would sort out a few problems. But I think it's finished far too early. I didn't get the same buzz even around the All-Ireland final this year at Kemlin. It went fairly quickly. So I think that needs to be extended. But a tweak in here and there,
It's funny, reading Colm Collins, the Clare manager, in the back page of the papers, some of the papers this morning, Declan, he's talking about some of the rules, and I think the back page of the Irish Independent, he's speaking about maybe taking some pressure off the referees in terms of timekeeping for sin bins and that sort of thing. But he also, interestingly, speaks about the attacking mark as something that he's not a major fan of. I think he basically said that for midfielders the mark is potentially a good thing, but that the greater skill for a full forward would maybe be to catch the ball and lay it off to a runner. So what's your take on some of those rules involved in the game, in particular the attacking mark?
Listen, I think in terms of the timekeeping, I think that's worked extremely well in the ladies' game. I don't see any reason why it can't be implemented into the men's game. To mark, I was never a fan of it, to be quite honest. I think it hasn't served the purpose it was there for. You know, people are taking advantage. Maybe you have a 40, and once you're issued a 45, a 20-yard dink pass, and you're collecting the ball on the ground, and the game's held up. It's a mark. And even if you want a high ball inside, you know, I look back to the goal that Michael Murphy got. I know you have the option of playing on, but you know, that ball coming in and a full forward running that ball and turning and taking his man on back of the net or over the bar. I think that's a great skill, and I think that's been taken out of the game now. And to me, it hasn't served that purpose now. I would be one that would like to see it go, to be quite honest.
Declan, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning, and congratulations on your career and whatever comes next.
No problem. Thanks very much, lads. Thank you.
It's Declan Bonner there giving us some thoughts on his time at Donegal. It's 8:39 this morning. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. A reminder, of course, that Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB. Every week we're giving one lucky viewer a €100 voucher to spend on some Braeburn coffee goodness at an Apple Green store near you. Just check out @OffTheBall on Twitter, like and retweet our Braeburn competition post, and you'll be in the draw. Braeburn Coffee never compromises on quality or taste to give you the best on-the-go experience on the road. It's available at Apple Green today. Right, John Duggan is here. John, good morning to you. How are you?
Ger and Shane as well.
Shane insists that last night's assist was the greatest one he's ever seen in his life.
Oh, come on. Give me a break.
Hold on here.
Everything is the greatest since sliced pan when you saw it last night.
I didn't necessarily see it was the greatest assist I've ever seen, but Ger is using hyperbole this morning, John, and saying it's the greatest goal he's ever seen.
It's one of the best goals I've ever seen. It is.
You're backtracking now. I think it was the greatest a while ago, was it?
No. Manuel Negrete, 1986 World Cup. Maradona, 86 World Cup. Those kind of goals that are like...
He did,
it was sensational. It's a kung fu kick away from the goals.
It was sensational. I said that and I jumped out of my lazy boy at home. So it was that it took me to do that really meant it was a really big goal. But no, it's a very, very good goal. It's like a 9 out of 10 goal, but there have been better goals in the world.
Assist-wise, John, are you an assist connoisseur?
I don't really like it. It's like in the XG thing a bit for me. I was thinking about, because Colin asked me, just in the one that came off the top of my head was Maradona in the 86 World Cup final. Was heavily marked by Lothar Matthäus the whole game, and then just gets away from him, magic ball through to Bershagha. It's 2-2, last few minutes of the World Cup final, and Bershagha buries it, and that for me was the best assist I've ever seen.
I wouldn't have assists up there with XG. I think assists are an important, crucial aspect of the game.
Why can't we just call it a cross or a through ball?
Well, I think there should be a distinction in certain assists. Some assists are just passes, like the Maradona 86 run against England, but some assists, like last night, are noteworthy and worthy of acclaim, I think.
A lot of love for Goody in the comments on YouTube. Goody was the pure master of assists. If you want to see good stuff, that's from Tom McCauley. If you want to see great assists, look up a compilation of Goody for Real Madrid, says Tony Kay. And MJ Maloney says Goody's assist for Benzema against Deportivo, unbelievable. Somebody else saying it wasn't Beckham to Ronaldo, it was Beckham to Zidane versus Zaragoza, says Conor Delaney. I found there
was a Beckham to Ronaldo one though.
It was unbelievable. The cross is just whipped in, and Ronaldo basically just sticks a leg out at it, and it pings straight into the bottom corner. It was unbelievable.
I was thinking about acrobatic goals as well. Once again, context is important, and the magnitude of the game I always think is important. So Zidane against Bayer Leverkusen in the 2002 Champions League final comes to mind. But Marco Van Basten scored a goal against Den Bosch in 1986 where he literally turns like a plane, like completely like that, and volleys it into the top corner. It's worth checking out on YouTube.
Great cross, wasn't it? Great assist.
Is it a harbinger of the 88?
Yeah, it's definitely that, a harbinger, all right. And it should be in the Rijksmuseum, to be honest. It was like literally artistic.
Van Basten, Den Bosch.
Den Bosch. It's a thing of beauty. It's an absolute, like, you probably, if you had a beer or two, you probably burst into tears watching it, to be honest.
It wouldn't have been possible without the cross, though, John.
Oh, he looks so good in the Ajax jerseys, doesn't he? Those Ajax jerseys.
It's just the way he goes off the ground.
It's like the overhead bicycle kick.
Yeah, it's pure ballet, you know, football ballet.
Is he 20 at that stage? Maybe
he's but 21. Yeah,
that's not bad. Well, I mean, Arnold Muren's cross for his goal in the Euros final in '88. Maybe because I'm at the age where I'm watching football probably for the first time. You're like, wow, look at that. And the ball's in the air for about an hour, and he just watches it straight down onto his foot. And like, also, is it Dassayev and goals?
It is Dassayev, yeah.
That and his jersey's class.
Number 12.
And
you can't get that jersey anywhere. That jersey, they retired that jersey after that tournament. It's impossible to get an original of that jersey.
Did Dassey have one?
No, the Dutch jersey.
Oh, right. Why did they retire it?
They only, I don't know, they only use that specific brand of Adidas jersey for that tournament.
I have a retro knockoff version of it.
Yeah.
The 12 has slowly started to peel off the back of it as it goes through the wash.
It's going to make it look original.
Yeah, well, true. Yeah. Looks different.
It was interesting for Haaland because they lost the World Cup final 14 years previously. They should have won in the same stadium, in the Olympic Stadium Munich, which was the recent venue for the Athletics Championships. So, and Arenas Michels, who was the coach in '74, was back in '88. So there's a lot of symbolism to that game. The James, which we probably should have been in ourselves.
The Jason McAteer goal against the Dutch wouldn't have been possible without the scruffy Stephen left-footed cross on the right hand side.
Yeah,
these moments, lads, wouldn't have happened.
A lot of love for Robbie Brady's Robbie Brady's goal, Wes Houlihan's assist, is coming in from a lot of people as well. So,
like, I'm sure Glenn Hoddle had all these, they call them cultured players, have had, I'm sure, great moments. The only one I can think of off the top of my head that was Maradona, because it was literally a magic ball that just got the offside trap like that, and having been 2-0 up and then pegged back to 2-2, everything was on the knife edge in that World Cup final, and Bertrand scored.
Apparently there's a good Thierry Henry assist for a very young Leo Messi in 2008. Do people remember this at Celtic Park?
No, I don't remember that.
I remember that there was a great Thierry Henry assist for a William Gallas goal, was it? I guess? One of the great assists of all time.
Does that count as an assist?
It probably went down statistically as an assist in his career, but
it should have got. You know what it should have got? A Palme d'Or.
Oh,
hey, there you go.
And you're on it this morning.
I'm here all night. Try the soup. Feels good.
With a fork.
John, what else is going on?
So last night, Haaland, obviously, 13 goals now for City against Dortmund. Like I've said on the show before, this is appointment viewing. You're now actually going out of your way to watch Haaland play and see what he's going to do. Like, you're watching the movement of him. There should be a Haaland cam, really, and I'm sure there is through all these TV companies. But also last night, Celtic won all, as Rangers seem to be sinking like a stone at the moment. 3-0 defeat to Napoli at home. We had, obviously, as well, Chelsea 1-1 draw. Watch the highlights of that. It'll take Potter a while. It was interesting that the Chelsea fans clapped for Tuchel in the 21st minute. So I don't know what the Chelsea reception is going to be for Graham Potter. Maybe it's more a little bit of discomfort about the owners and the fact that they're making these changes so quickly.
Sorry, John, just on the Haaland goal, what's your take on players muting their celebrations against former clubs?
I think it's respectful. I don't think it should be too much should be made of it, that it becomes a thing where you're being very solemn about it. But I do think it's a respectful thing. I think it's a nice thing.
Joy restraint.
I'm sure Haaland.
It depends on the situation, right?
It's not short of joy in his life, or he can go into the dressing room and trash the dressing room up in pure unbridled joy.
Like if Declan Rice scores against Ireland, is he going to hold his hands up?
Well, Declan Rice probably is, to be honest.
He can kiss the badge. I do feel like Dortmund were really good to Haaland. Haaland was really good for Dortmund. Yeah. That's fine,
And Jude Bellingham afterwards was just wanted to kind of hang around with him. It was kind of a beautiful scene after the game. So he just wanted to kind of chat away. And so, yeah, you can feel the love. And Haaland, I always thought, and I didn't know this, I thought he was just a moody guy who was just really rude in interviews. And I couldn't have been more wrong. He just seems like a guy who's just a kid who enjoys his football,
Yeah, he's laid back.
He is still very young. That's the other thing about this. He's still very, very young. We don't know how good he's going to get,
Yeah, 22 years of age.
He adds experience to everything else.
Well, Cristiano Ronaldo muted his celebration when he scored at Old Trafford for Real a number of years ago. Angel Di Maria did quite the opposite.
Oh, yeah. So,
terrible
there's room for Emmanuel Adebayor streaking down the pitch going, yeah. I'm all up for that.
You got to admire that to some degree.
But I also, Haaland exactly is, that was nice. That Celtic-Barcelona game, by the way, is insane. It finishes Barcelona 3, Celtic 2, but Aidan McGeady is one of the best players on the pitch.
Yeah. Wearing the number 46, he was that version of McGeady was something else, and he's still doing it.
He's tearing Barcelona apart. Has he played? He's been injured since.
Yeah, he's been injured, but I mean, he can still do it.
Yeah.
He's at that level, not quite the same level he was back in those Celtic days. But I mean,
is he the Irish Dimitar Berbatov?
In what sense?
Probably did fulfil, although there's still a nagging sense that he didn't. Is he 90 caps? 98, 90 something caps?
Probably does. He's had a good career.
As he scored another brilliant acrobatic goal, Dimitar Berbatov against Liverpool went off the post. I think it was a 3-2 win for you.
That was the hat-trick goal in front of the Stratford end. I mean, that's stuff dreams are made of.
Yeah, he was a good man for Spurs as well. So we have Shamrock Rovers obviously in Ghent. Their 100th European game ever, which is a lovely landmark for Shamrock Rovers.
The Ghent manager has laid into the managers of the other teams in the group for calling us Brits. I'm like, this guy, he can come and he can be our new Ireland manager at some point. I stick him on the list.
Yeah.
In the next odds for the Ireland manager, whenever Stephen Kenny goes, like, the guy from Ghent, he likes us.
Ever been to Ghent, folks?
He's watched us on Y Scout.
Never been to Ghent, John.
I've been to Ypres and I've been to Leuven, where I think they make the beer Stella.
If you were to ask me the one place that I thought you might have been, I would have said Ypres in Belgium. That's
the most John Duggan place ever.
Yes. I'd say it's a bit of a Shane Hannon place too.
Yeah, I've done Brussels and Liège and Bastogne and different World War II sites, but Liège was one of the most grim places I've ever been.
Right.
Bruges, because of the Martin McDonagh film, is on my...
Oh, you haven't been?
No, I've never been. It's on my list.
No.
Bruges, lovely. The best ever meals I had was in Bruges.
Really?
In a restaurant, yeah. It was just a beautiful meal.
What Colin Farrell's character called the shithole in the movie, didn't he? Which is harsh. It looks like a nice place.
It's beautiful. It's really nice. It's really medieval and lovely church and beautiful chocolate shop. If you like your chocolate, they actually have this kind of like a pod of it's almost like a rose, and you get the hot milk and you just like let the thing just dip into the milk and it just melts. It's a beautiful place.
Have you done Ghent?
Never done Ghent, no. But I quite like that part of the world.
Yeah.
And anywhere with beer and chocolate's always good.
A couple of Belgian blondes with that, blonde beers with that Ghent coach. He should come over and celebrate. When the return leg happens in Dublin, I mean, he sounds like a guy with a bit of a head and shoulders. He's actually done research on Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, he says they're very good technical players, and he thinks that at some stage they're going to be getting out of the group, and hopefully it's not at the expense of Ghent, and hopefully they can go through together. I'm like, as opposed to the previous coaches are all like, this is going to be kick and rush, isn't it? This is a British team we're playing. Like, none of the British teams playing in Europe at the moment actually are kick and rush either.
No. It's where the best league in the world is now, isn't it?
I mean, it's all a bit mad.
As much as Todd Bailey is not sure that it is the best league in the world. So we have Stephen Kenny naming a squad later on for the Armenia and Scotland games. We'd hope that Robbie Brady's back in there. Scott Hogan actually scored a hat-trick last night for Birmingham against West Brom. Chido Zigbene and Georgie Kelly are also in the mark for Rotherham last night as well, which is interesting. So, we'll probably be asked obviously about Michael Obafemi, about Caoimhín Kelleher, so there'll be some talking points out of that. Man United against Sheriff and Moldova in the Europa League this evening, same time as Shamrock Rovers, 5:45. Cristiano Ronaldo is expected to play because Marcus Rashford's got a muscle injury, he's out of the game. Rory McIlroy teamed it up with the Italian Open this week, which is the venue, the Marco Simone course for the Ryder Cup next year. And Rory's been kind of going, forget about these old guys, we're all about the future now. So Rory's every single week seems to be, making his points very clear about Liv. Leona Maguire also in the Portland Classic in Oregon, and she's doing so well. So also racing at Nace as well, folks. And we're getting ready for Listowel in the next week or so as well. The Harvest Festival down in Kerry attracts a really good local community as well.
We've done that piece with Davy Russell. That's going to go out, and he hasn't not announced his retirement at all, but he has started to talk about himself as I emptied the tank in my career as a jockey.
Yeah.
So if you get the opportunity to go and see Davy Russell riding, you should take that opportunity. It's like one of those kind of great careers that if you haven't seen, it's one of those great sports moments. If you haven't seen Messi play, you got to go and cross it off your list.
Message in, John, from Brian Dillon. Was the restaurant at Bruges called Quatre Man? Oh my God, I still think about it to this day after 8 years.
Brian, no, the restaurant was called the Park Restaurant. But I'll definitely, if I go back, I'll definitely check that one out. There was a cafe called the Red Rose Cafe, which did beer sampling where you get 4 Belgian beers. So I said, I want the strongest first, and I'm going to go down in descending order to the last one. So it was an interesting, probably 90 minutes of my life.
There's a 10-minute highlight of that Celtic Barcelona game. It's absolutely insane.
What year was that?
It's 08.
Right.
07, 08, round of 16. All right, so it's round of 16. So there's like a lot riding on it at that stage. And it is Messi, Iniesta, Ronaldinho, Samuel Eto'o, who I think comes off, and then Thierry Henry comes on. Thierry Henry scores one of those Thierry Henry goals where, if I say that, what does he do? Colin's making the movement.
He
curls it top right from the left.
Sorry, of course. Yes.
Comes in from the left, curls it top right. It's exactly the Thierry Henry goal that you've seen. And Aidan McGeady, absolutely sensational in that game, So, right. Waste going to Belgium and not watching some cycling, particularly Liège, the start and finish of one of the monuments, a race Kelly won. says TP Briano. Liège-Bastogne-Liège is actually the race.
Yeah. But I've been to Liège, and maybe it's because my memory was darkened by a certain Grand Prix, but Liège was
Still
grim.
talking about that bloody Grand
I know,
Prix.
I said I'd never bring it up again, but someone else has it. Liège, that's where we were staying before going to Spa, and it struck me as quite a commercial, industrial, kind of grim, almost Soviet bloc era.
Pretty standard.
Place.
Justin Flynn says, lads, you cannot talk about assists and not mention Dennis Bergkamp, the king of assists. It helped that he played with great players, but yeah, absolutely. Ryan McGowan's assist for Tim Cahill versus Holland. I don't remember that one, says Ronan Gilsonen.
It was a goal in the World Cup, wasn't it?
2014 World Cup?
I think so.
And then Phantom Jack says, best wishes to Declan. Terrific server to Donegal, who showed incredible commitment. Unfortunately, things were never the same after the Cavan game, and the football this year was poor. I think he would make the case that if they just got over Derry, but that Cavan game definitely seems to have taken it out of them and broken them psychologically. So up for a new management to come in and fix that.
Declan's point on the attacking mark struck me, that the point he made, but like the 2012 goal from Michael Murphy, would it have happened if the attacking mark existed? Would he have caught the ball over the Mayo defenders and put his hand up to take the mark and taken the point? Possibly.
I mean, it's a stupid rule.
Yeah, it could have ruined one of the great goals in All-Ireland final history. Yeah. So yeah.
All right, John, good stuff.
All right, Ger, Shane, mind yourselves.
John's back on Saturday afternoon on Off the Ball on News Talk, and a reminder, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio today. OTB Gold is Jason Sherlock at 1 o'clock. Classic Leaders Questions with Stuart Lancaster at 3. Our retro panel, How We Coach Kids, at 4. OTB Gold is Wexford 1956. The legends of that team speaking to us when they were obviously still with us. OTB is live tonight. Nathan in the driving seat with John Giles, live as usual over Thursday, and plenty more besides. Make sure you follow us across all of our social platforms, and download the OTB Sports app for the fastest and best access to our podcast network. We're back after this for a fresh episode of You Had to Be There with rugby journalist Rory O'Connor.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Just put my football analyst hat on. They don't have as much ability to switch things around like Arsenal do with Niedema, Blacksenius. They can try different formations. Don't think United might have that. They don't have the personnel to do that.
Subscribe to the OTB Koyig pod on the OTB Sports app now.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good, but this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Celebrate European Week of Sport this September at the Be Active Festival. An action-packed day out for the whole family at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Come and try new sports, fitness challenges and skill tests at Ireland's biggest sporting festival. Meet sporting legends. Check out the Inflatable Zone, Village Food Market and much more. There's something for everyone at the Be Active Festival. Saturday, September 24th at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Book your tickets now at beactivefestival.ie.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. Because somewhere out there, there's someone for you. And GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It was so unexpected.
You had to be there.
Covering Celtic at that time was a brilliant thing. The atmosphere at Parkhead was always great.
You had to be there.
Nobody ever talks about this game. Nobody saw it.
You had to be there.
So this is the latest episode of You Had to Be There, and I'm delighted to say Rory O'Connor, rugby journalist with the Irish Independent, is with us. Rory, I'm a little bit shocked there's no Bohemians on this.
Yeah. Well, Colin kind of did say, your best 5 rugby moments, and I haven't gone all 5 rugby. I'm pretty blessed. I think that my dad took me to everything when I was a kid, so I've been at incredible sporting events, and I know this isn't about the event or the the kind of the moment, but it's about an individual's performance within that. So I kind of stuck to some professional kind of, you know, 4 of my picks were games I covered as a journalist, and then the 5th is a game that I attended as a kid. Yeah, I was trying to think of an individual Bohs one or even a Dublin one, because, you know, I've been at most of Dublin's All-Ireland wins and stuff like that, and I couldn't. Partly it's my just really bad memory of actually picking out individual performances in games and going, God, what was I at that? And part of it was, you know, just I suppose I probably pay attention more when I'm working at a game, so things stand out more. So partly kind of trying to be professional and picking 4 rugby ones, and partly the fact that individual performance for Bohs. I remember great moments, I remember great games, but actually picking out one player who dominated the game in the way that these 5 examples are is probably tricky enough.
It's probably when you're a sports journalist as well, you've been to so many games and so many different codes that it's kind of like Woodstock. You're like, was I at that game? Yeah, well, it's also, I played rugby for about 15 years and probably drank a lot more than I should as well, so I think my brain cells have turned to mush. So it's actually, and I think, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but maybe it's the amount of sport we watch as well, but like everything kind of blurs into one. And my first pick is a goal in 1996 in a Premier League game, in a time where a good goal like lived for a whole season, whereas now a good goal barely lasts a weekend.
Yeah.
So I think everything's kind of mushed into one, and I do player ratings for Mondays in though after international games, and I think that actually forces me to go back and watch the game through the prism of performance, and that probably is the reason I remember individual performances. And also have to come in here and talk about it and, you know, write about it all week.
Yeah,
I take notes. Maybe I should start just taking notes. Maybe that's where I need to start.
But the fact you do take notes on matches means that you probably have better recall of them. So let's start, right? Yeah. Georgie Concladze, Man City versus Southampton on the 16th of March 1996. What's special about this?
Well, the goal, I think, and again, I probably misread Colin, the producer's text, when he first said it, and I was thinking about moments or kind of things you're at, and like I randomly found myself in Main Road in March 1996.
We all thought it was just moments, don't worry. But
yeah, well, I did initially, and then I missed it. But I kind of wanted to keep this one partly because I don't think there's many people who are going to come in and say there's not many people who can say they were there on the day that Georgie Concladze scored one of the great Premier League goals, and once I then had to talk about it, I've kind of been looking at it a lot this morning at kind of what happened on the day, and he did, like, you know, the highlights are pretty much all Concladze, but for some reason, the reason is my dad, I was a Liverpool fan when I was a kid, my dad was a Chelsea fan, Liverpool were playing Chelsea in Anfield, and we picked this as my first game to go to. Like, I've been obsessed with Liverpool as a kid. We booked I can't remember if it was a ferry or flights, but we stayed in Chester, but we couldn't get tickets for Liverpool, and like we were trying, we went to Anfield the day before, went to the shop, you know, begged them for tickets, but we couldn't get tickets for this game. I think it was the day Patrick Berger scored 3 goals against Chelsea. I may be wrong about that, but so we were in England anyway, and Manchester's not that far away, and City were playing Southampton. So my dad said, "No problem. Will we go to this? No problem. Absolutely none." There's the year City got relegated, so we drove to Main Road that morning, picked up a couple of tickets at the box office. Went along. I think I was wearing my Liverpool away kit underneath my Liverpool. I had all David James's goalkeeper jerseys, and I had to. And my dad was like, "We're going into the City because it's outside Main Road." I think it's obviously all changed now at the Etihad and the Glitz, and City was a very different place. They kind of had a working men's club outside where we went for a drink beforehand, and Dad was like, "Make sure you zip up your coat because, you know, they're not going to like the fact you're wearing Liverpool kit." But they were really welcoming, and you know, once they realised they were really friendly, kind of told them the story, they kind of laughed about it. We went in. The atmosphere was great. The match was terrible. It was like, I've been watching highlights this morning. It was classic 90s spring, but like the pitch was showing the effect of midwinter, and this guy, and again, like, I wasn't a City fan. While I was obsessed with football, you know, I knew a number of the characters on the pitch, like Dave Besant was in goal for Southampton, Ken Moncow, that kind of team. Letizia was playing up front for them, but I don't remember him doing an awful lot, and I don't remember a lot of details out of the game as I was 13. But this goal, he scored the first goal, which was a tap in following in. Again, I don't remember this. I watched this on YouTube this morning to refresh my memory. But he scores the first goal, but this guy was just so much better than everyone else on the pitch. Yeah. And the second goal, it actually didn't win goal of the season last season. Tony Yeboah won goal of the season for the year, which in fairness was a pretty good goal. But I think this one's better. I think certainly people our vintage will remember the goal. He picks up the ball outside the box, and this is before Messi. You know, it was Maradona-esque, I suppose, at the time. He just leaves 3 Southampton defenders for dead without seeming to do an awful lot, goes in, and then he just stops, and Besant moves first. He tricks Besant into it, and again, Messi made this his stock and trade, but at the time it was just this incredible, just an incredible goal. He just dinks it over him and nonchalantly runs away, and you come to a game, like it's this kind of, it's the any given Sunday thing. Anything can happen on any given Saturday. If you go to a stadium, you go to a film, you know what to expect. You go to a stadium, it might be the 2 worst teams in the world, but someone can do something magic, and that transcended the day. It's something I'll always remember of a day that I don't really remember an awful lot from.
And then you're hooked for life. That's it. You're a football fan.
I was already pretty hooked at that stage, and City went down, and I pretty much detest them now because of what they've become. But I'll always I always kind of had a soft spot for them after that day because of the main road experience and the friendliness of the people, and because we saw something special. I suppose I actually had forgotten when I picked my picks. We went back to Liverpool the following year and saw them beat Middlesbrough 5-1, and Robbie Fowler scored 4 goals that day, so that was pretty good. Actually, Collymore was better.
Right.
I think he set up all 4 of the 5 on the day. That was a pretty good individual performance as well. But I'd already sent my text.
That's the season of the 4-3, is it?
I think it would have been, yeah. When I remember being frustrated by Collymore, watching him on TV, and then you saw him in person. I was like, oh my God, this guy is absolutely phenomenal. And obviously Fowler scored 4 goals, so that was a contender for my list, I suppose.
It's funny those memories of going to matches with a lot of times with your dad or your brother or whatever, and the smoky, as you say, working clubs and like bars before games, and there's something about that environment, especially back in the 90s and the noughties, where you just never forget those moments. It kind of almost brings together your relationship with your dad in some ways, where you're like, this is something I will never forget, those games.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people that rings true. And my dad, I presume it was just, now that I have a kid myself, it was getting us out of the house, but we used to pack up every weekend. We used to go to Leinster Club Championship games across the province. I've been to Ulster finals, I've been to Munster Championship games. We just used to go to matches. We used to go to all Dublin's home and away league games. We'd go to Bows home and away. It was just something we did. We went to matches, and I don't know how much he must have spent on tickets over the years, because we went to all the Ireland soccer games as well. So I've been at some amazing things.
Tickets weren't ridiculous at that stage.
No, they weren't. I've seen the prices for the autumn internationals that are coming up, and you're like, God, how do you afford to bring your family to this? It's a different beast.
I think the sport doesn't understand that. You don't hook the 8, 9, 10-year-olds if they're not at the games, because watching on TV, it's not the same.
Yeah, and even the idea, I mean, Liverpool-Chelsea was sold out, that's what I was going to, but you could turn up at Main Road. I don't know how many, I haven't tried to go to a Premier League game for a long time, but I don't know how easy it is to turn up at, say, Brentford or something and pick up a ticket. Maybe it's easier than I think it is, but it was simpler times.
Am I right in saying City were relegated from the Premier League?
They were, yeah. Niall Quinn come off the bench that day. I think that was the year they went to the corner in the final game of the season when the bad information was coming through. It wasn't a memorable City team. You look at the list of players, Uwe Rosler was up front, but Kinkadze was kind of even now there's articles produced about how he was the shining light in this dark period, and I just looked at he has a Twitter account. He hasn't used it since 2018, but he's clearly hitched himself to the ambassador bandwagon. He's still remembered, and because they've so few great players that they can go back to, until the current generation retires, he's one of the lads making a bit of coin off it. But why wouldn't he? He was I didn't realise he played at Boca Juniors as a teenager.
Did he?
He was from Georgia. He ended up at Boca Juniors. He apparently announced himself onto the world. He scored, I think it was a hat-trick in a 5-0 win over Wales, where he lobbed Neville Southhill from the edge of the box, an absolute wonder strike. City apparently had already been watching him. They brought him in. It was part of that vanguard of first overseas players, non-Irish or British players to come to the Premier League. It was a pretty exciting time, and I'll always it's just a moment. It's just this incredible goal, and I think even now, sated and all as we are by the goals that we see on a weekly basis, it was just an incredible finish. And again, looking at the highlights, it vindicated my choice, because he does basically everything the City do well in the game.
We even found a picture of him with a black armband for the week that's in it.
Absolutely fitting. Figure out who that's for.
Okay, Rob Kearney, the Lions versus South Africa, June 24th, 2009.
Yeah, this was one I quit a job in a bank and became a journalist and went on this tour as my first assignment as a freelance. I was going anyway as a fan, and Dan McDonnell, who's a good friend of mine, suggested, why don't you try and pick up a bit of work, and I did. So I was in Loftus Versfeld on the second test, having covered the full tour, but also had a group of mates kind of that I could go to in between games. I was having a great time, but again, you pick these things and you go, God, was it as good as I thought it was? And I went back and there's a YouTube video. It's Rob Kearney, greatest Lions performance of all time, and it's just all his little moments in the game. And it's any excuse. I know you had this on your Classic Games Club with Brian O'Driscoll, who until he got knocked out by his own bravery, trying to tackle Danny Russo, and they both got knocked out. Played a major part in this game, and a lot of players played really well, because it's one of the greatest games of rugby of all time. It's the most brutal game. It's still seen as the most brutal game of all time. But Kearney kind of rose above. He was helped, I think, just watching the clips. So, like, Ruan Pinar started at 10 for the box that day, and their kicking strategy was to kick long to Rob Kearney, which maybe shows that they didn't do a lot of research. He had come into the tour. He'd missed, I think he was on the bench for the Heineken Cup final, Leinster's first win. He'd had mumps. I remember one of the highlights of the tour from a media point of view was Hugh Faraday from the Indo, I think it was, asking a young Rob Kearney, who was a good-looking chap around UCD at the time, how do you contract mumps? And the entire press back giggling away, and Kearney trying to keep a straight face. But he had mumps, and it interrupted the season. And he came in, I think, behind Lee Byrne. Lee Byrne started the first test, and Lee Byrne was just on top of his game. And the Welsh, I think, always have a head start in these things. But Byrne got injured. Kearney came on and helped change that first test, but the second test, he was just magnificent. And again, Conor Murray's one of my picks later on. He's one of the, as these players get older and probably become more conservative and have injuries and things, they become almost, people want to get them out of the team. But when you look at how good Kearney was at that time in his career in 2009, he was phenomenal. He scores a try, he wins everything in the air, he runs it back with venom, he causes the Springboks all sorts of problems. And he was brilliant in Chicago when Ireland beat New Zealand in 2016, but I think that was the day he will probably look back on. Maybe I'm speaking for him, I don't know, but that was the day that everything clicked for him, and in a defeated team, he was just magnificent.
It showed that he was world class.
Yeah,
and that's it's very rare that we don't get that many world class performances from Irish players, particularly in a moment of crisis.
Sure, yeah, and it's hard to dominate a game of rugby. It's hard when there's 30 players on the pitch and it's such a cohesive game to shine so bright. And that's one of the challenges I had with this was, I wasn't there when O'Driscoll scored his hat-trick in 2000. That obviously, if I was, that would be there. I wasn't in New Zealand last summer, so I'm sure there would be individual performances from that. I wasn't at Northampton Leinster, and Sexton would clearly be there if I was, but these are games that I was actually at, and I just, even you go back and you watch it just to justify it, and Stuart Barnes was just like this guy. Everything he touches turns to gold. It was a phenomenal performance I can't explain how ferocious Loftus Versfeld was that day. It was, Chalk Burger got so carried away he gouged Luke Fitzgerald in the first minute. It was hot and heavy, it was dirty, it was intense, it was everything a Lions test can be when things get heavy. And he just, a bit like Bowden Barrett against Ireland in 2016, when everyone was beating the crap out of each other, and he just waltzed through gaps and just played a different sport to everyone else. That's one that could have made my list. Kearney was magnificent that day.
I'd forgotten the halftime score as well, 16-8 to the Lions. Like, you nearly forget, because they lost the game ultimately. Like, the game was.
They had them at arm's length the whole first hour. It was before the bomb squad. South Africans unloaded their bench. Lions lost both their starting props. They lost O'Driscoll, all to injuries, and it was a bloodbath. Apparently, the dressing room afterwards. I was in the team hotel that night because we ended up having dinner in the team hotel, and there was a group going out, but it was a small group. There was just walking wounded everywhere. Lads knew their tours were over. It was grim, and obviously the finish, everything about it was so dramatic. The drop goal, sorry, not the drop goal. The kicking. Actually, just before the infamous, which Ron O'Gara won't thank me for bringing up again, but the infamous up and under, which I think Tommy Bowe didn't chase properly. Kearney gets the ball in a similar situation and actually kicks an unbelievable kick. He kicked a couple of what will be 50-22s now in the second half. He had unbelievable composure when the game was getting away from the Lions. He was still doing the right thing at the right times as others lost their heads around them. It was an incredible and a match to be at. The try from Jack Fourie was incredible, and then the kick to win it was just what a moment.
It's good that individual performances on losing teams aren't forgot. I guess Shane Walsh this year in the All-Ireland final is one that maybe over time people will realise, okay, he lost the game but was absolutely immaculate. Similarly for Kearney, maybe over the passage of time you remember the individual performances in losing games.
Sometimes they actually live with me longer, and I have another one on this list that we'll come to, I'm sure, but I remember Jamie Heaslip, who was much maligned as an Ireland captain. He led Ireland in the 2015 quarter-final against Argentina, and I thought, in a team that stank the joint out that day, he kept playing all day. 2019 quarter-final against New Zealand. Peter O'Mahony, who again I've been critical of over the years, he was the one who carried the fight to New Zealand over and over again, even when everyone around them was losing their heads. He was the one who dragged Ireland, and Ireland were still in both of those games for a while through the force of will of those players. Sean O'Brien in 2013 when Ireland lost to New Zealand, like that was very close to making this list. He was magnificent that day, and was, you know, these are players that are very unlucky to be on the losing side. So it is, I don't know, does it live with me more, but yeah, it's a strange one.
The next one is Paul O'Connell, actually, and it is a game we lose. This is March 15, 2015, Ireland against Wales. Wales 23, Ireland 16. What was it about Paul O'Connell's performance that day?
It was his 100 cap, and he was the captain. And I'd say, just counting them down, he probably played another 5 games for Ireland before his body gave up on him in that horrible moment when Pascal Pape hit him from the side in the same stadium. And again, I picked this, and then I went back and watched it afterwards, because I was like, God, is your mind playing tricks on it? And it was just the day that Paul O'Connell made a couple of line breaks, and you remember those. But it was a day where everything went against Ireland. They went 3-6-9-12 down because Wayne Barnes started policing the breakdown in a way that Ireland weren't expecting. It was one of the days where Gatland got into Ireland's heads. Every power play they tried to play, Wales were jockeying them off the ball. They were making sure that whatever line Ireland were trying to run, Wales were just basically upsetting them. And it was one of the days where the Joe Schmidt system failed. And Sexton had a bad day. He missed a really kickable kick. He put a restart straight in the touch. At one stage, Jamie Heaslip throws the ball to him and he's not looking and hits him on the back of the head.
Right.
It's just one of those days where everything's going against Ireland, and midway through the first half, you know that this is not going to be their day. And they won their first 3 games in the Six Nations. It's O'Connell's 100 cap. If they win, they have Scotland away to win a Grand Slam the following week. And through his own force of will, O'Connell drags them into the game. And he... there were the 2 standout moments or 2 line breaks. One is off a Sexton inside pass. I can't remember how the second one materialises early in the second half, but they are key moments in terms of just changing the momentum of the game at a time where it's gone. And Ireland end up camped. They score a penalty. They go 2 scores down with about 10 minutes to go, and they score a penalty try through a maul, which O'Connell's obviously fundamentally part of. So their line-out goes to crap as well. Best throw starts going wobbly, and all sorts is going wrong. And I don't know if Paul O'Connell looks back on this performance with any great fondness. But it's one of those captain's days where you can see his influence in the team. And I flicked through it last night just to try and validify my own choice. He's everywhere. I don't know, is it because he stands out because he's tall, bald, and he looks really much older than all the other players on the pitch. It's weird, but he's everywhere. His energy levels for a guy of his, the amount of miles under the clock were incredible. The condition he was in. And they're on the Welsh line. They lose a line out. Sam Warburton, of all people, who won man of the match on the day, he was brilliant as well, picks them off, and they get another line out, and they maul all the way to the Welsh line, and the Welsh pull it down, and Wayne Barnes doesn't give the try. And it should have been a draw if Sexton kicks Sexton was gone. I think Madigan would have had to kick the conversion to draw it. But O'Connell was just the fulcrum of all of that good work. It was an incredible individual performance in defeat. And
I didn't realise that so it should have been a draw, right?
Yeah, at the time you would have, because we would have been talking about it all week, and Schmidt went mad about it, but they had a better chance 2 minutes beforehand, and their line out, the throw was picked off by Warburton. So again, there was things in their own control. There was another moment earlier in the game where they had the ball at the base of a ruck and they had a 5-man overlap and they went tight. It was all the things that 25-15 Joe Schmidt team was quite conservative.
Yeah.
And at times they opened up. Chicago, we're going to talk about later, they opened up, but at that time they were quite conservative. They were still, it was life after Darcy O'Driscoll. It was Henshaw and Payne in their first season. They were still finding their way, and they won the Six Nations that year. They went and won it the following week, but it should have been a Grand Slam because it was one of those magnificent Ireland-Wales blood and thunder Welsh defensive efforts. Gatland gets one over Schmidt, in the cauldron. It was a tale as old as time, but he tried to change the narrative. He failed, but he did everything he physically could to do it.
It's funny you're talking about Ireland being camped in there in the Welsh half. Like reading the match report here, O'Connell, a break from Paul O'Connell's part, a lengthy 32 phase period of pressure. Yeah. Ireland 15-9 down at that point. Yeah. And obviously Wales held out.
And Wales, well, they held out by conceding a penalty. Yeah. And then they got another 10 or 11 phases, in which time they had basically the ball. Cian Healy has the ball in his hands, and there are just green jerseys outside him, and he picks and goes. And at the time, it was a big talking point that Ireland were just not able to have any vision in the 22, and Schmidt hated that criticism, and it was a big thing at the time. And Ireland struggled in Cardiff under Joe in those big Six Nations games, and it was like, it's a difficult place to go. It was a great Welsh team. You look at the names in that Welsh pack, and like, in fairness, if we were on a Welsh show now, we'd be talking about the incredible defensive effort. Yeah. But Ireland should have lost that game by 20-30 points if it wasn't for, I believe, O'Connell.
there's also Gatland was an evil genius. Which we refuse to accept that in Ireland because, it's like it was always against us. His most evil deeds were...
I think the English would say that he was able to pull a few things against them as well. But he had a great capacity to get under Schmidt's skin.
Yeah, we should kind of love Warren Gatland for what he's like.
I think in time, I think the place is duller without him.
He was a worthy adversary. Like he raised the standards
with a great backstory, as all great villains should have. So it's. No, it made it all the more kind of every Wales game at that time, especially over there, because they weren't never that great in Dublin. Cardiff, and it's such a great place to watch a match.
Wayne Barnes wasn't definitely another villain that day. You mentioned his name, like O'Connell's quotes afterwards. He says, "We gave ourselves a lot to do early in the game with some of the penalties given away and the referee's interpretation," which was a polite way of saying Wayne Barnes.
Yeah, well, he just policed them in a way that they hadn't been policed all season, and I presume they were briefed by it beforehand, but they didn't adapt at all, and they found themselves. I think they went 15-3 down. Lee Halfpenny kicked all the points, and then they were chasing. And Ireland weren't good at chasing at that time, but because O'Connell was on the pitch, it gave them a chance.
Wasn't there a stat that we hadn't ever won a game from behind for a long period of time? It was like
one
a
stage,
25 game run.
We were very good at getting ahead, though. Ireland were under Schmidt. That was his template. That was the 3-6-9. Then score a try, but that was his template, and Gatland almost used it against them, and it was so smart. Like you look at there, you can see them setting up for these plays, and the Welcher like barreling them in off the ball, and you could see Joe going mad up in the coaching box. But he had a captain on the pitch who was, like we all know. Again, you're talking about a player who was a second row. Second rows, I know I've two on this list, but it's hard for a second row to stand out in a game, particularly a hard-working second row like that. But I would say it was one of his signature performances, even though it was in defeat.
All right, Conor Murray's next, and this is Ireland versus New Zealand.
To win.
In 2016. This is Soldier Field, right?
Soldier Field, yeah. A game that seems to have, I just constantly hear people diminishing it as a thing. I think possibly because it wasn't on free-to-air TV in Ireland, and a lot of people didn't see it. It was late at night, and because it was a weakened All Blacks team, not because of selection issues, but because they had injuries. It was in Chicago. There was an AIG gig, and they're sponsored by AIG, and they had to do a couple of commercial things. But I interviewed the captain the day before the game. He turned up at a big kind of corporate thing. So Kieran Reid, Malky Fakatoa and Ryan Crotty were at an AIG gig the day before the game, which would be very unusual. So yeah, maybe their eyes were taken off the ball. But again, watching it back last night, they didn't want to lose that game. It's not as if they handed Ireland an easy first win after 100 odd years.
No.
And Murray's performance within that was phenomenal. I don't know how many times I've done it. I should probably keep a record of these things, but I gave him 10 out of 10 in the Monday's paper. And again, you go back and you're, Jesus, did I get carried away by the excitement of it all? And I watched it, I flicked through it last night, and you forget that Johnny Sexton went off 20 minutes to go and Joey Carbery comes on for his debut. So Murray's basically playing with a newbie beside him, and he guides him through it so well. He scores a magnificent try in the first half. Again, it's a reminder of how good he was, because he's in that Rob Kearney bracket now of people wishing him out of the team, and you've got Craig Casey, you've got other players coming along. Gibson Parks knocked him out of the team, so he's hanging on in there. He's a veteran now, and people don't see him as a fashionable option, and he's still a very good player, although he could speed things up, and maybe you could do it watching what he was like in 2016 and trying to get back to that level, because he was able to do it all back then. He was up against Aaron Smith, who I think everyone saw as the best scrum half in the world at the time. Smith had been through a bit of a crisis. He'd been caught in the bathroom in flagrante and on All Blacks duty, and it had been on the front pages of all the papers, and his status had been diminished a little bit, and he wasn't as good as he was before, and he became afterwards. But Murray dominated him from start to finish. His try is just a moment of brilliant opportunism. He actually steps inside Smith to score it, and he just looks imperious. He looks so at ease with himself across the 80 minutes. And at the end, after kind of hand-holding Carbery through his debut and taking over the kicking for some of the things, he kicks a goal to put Ireland, as the All Blacks storm back, as everyone says, everyone seems to remember. Here it comes. Oh yeah, absolutely. Everyone seems to remember this is an easy day for Ireland, that they came back really strong, and I actually rewritten my match report to say Ireland blow chance. I had two beside each other ready to use one, because that's what you have to do. And Murray kicks a penalty, and then when they move left off that scrum, Zebo kicks ahead. Survey and Fekatoa do an interchange behind their own line. It's Murray who chases the kick. He passes off the right hand scrum. They go up the left, and it's Murray who nails Julian Surveyor behind his own line with an unbelievable tackle that forces the scrum. And then he gives the pass to Robbie Henshaw to score the try that breaks 100 years of history and wins the game. And while the narrative has changed since, and Ireland have beaten them is it 4 times since or 3 times? No, 4 times since in probably 6 games. That you had to win. You had to win the first one. That was the most important one to win, and I think Chicago shouldn't be diminished. And certainly Murray's performance within that was phenomenal.
The geography adds to it, like Soldier Field, Chicago. Obviously, it's going to live.
For me and Jared does, because we were there.
Yeah,
I think for some people, it was obviously big, but like genuinely, it was on air, and a lot of people didn't have air at the time. If you had Virgin, you couldn't watch air, and it was on late at night, so it didn't have the same the I don't know what the word is, that the transcendent experience that you have watching something on either Virgin or RT, because it's free and it's there. So I do think, but it was amazing.
It was
Soldier Field, and it was iconic. Like it was the closest thing to to World Cup '94, I think, that I ever got, because I didn't get there. So you're right. Like, as a venue, it was amazing.
Good night out, lads, in Chicago that night.
Pretty good, yeah.
I had a great week. That night I was working, because suddenly I went from like having a match report and a few bits to do to a 12-page pull out for the following Monday. But the week was fun. I remember a steak dinner, Ger, at one stage.
Sensational.
Because
Chicago Cut Steakhouse.
The Cubs won the World Series. I went to see the Bears on the Monday. It was an incredible week. Right. So we had a good time, but that night, work took over that night. I wasn't quite able to celebrate it, but I'm sure everyone else did.
We did. I lost a coat and keys that night. I still follow the Chicago Cut Steakhouse on Instagram. They're a very good follow, and very nice people.
An excellent restaurant, yeah.
I would recommend. The sides are amazing.
Yes.
The players were staying in Trump's hotel, which has like a giant emblazoned gold Trump. It's on a massive skyscraper, and it was the weekend before the election, and I just had this terrible feeling. I remember this isn't going to be straightforward, because Hillary was 10 points ahead at that stage.
Because I stayed on an extra day afterwards, so I think I didn't fly till Tuesday. So on the Monday, everyone had left. So the previous week, the Cubs won the World Series. There was an incredible parade through the city. Watching the Cubs win the World Series. I don't care about baseball. I don't know that, but suddenly I was a massive Cubs fan. I remember when they won it, I was like,
can't understand,
roaring.
Bandwagon,
It was a bit like the Queen's funeral in terms of crowds on the streets.
And we were watching it. I was watching it from Trump Tower with Rory Best going, "This is you" on Monday back, and like joking to him. And he was like, "I wish." And we were watching it from above, from Trump Tower, where Ireland were doing our media. And it was just thronged. It was incredible. You're right. It was. I think there was something like 6 million on the streets or something.
It was ridiculous.
Something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then
they were breaking a curse that was 100 years old.
Yeah, just like us. And then
the Mayo of
the rugby show. Yeah, well, even worse. Like, it's a lot longer than Mayo, and for a big franchise in a big city, like, it meant everything to them. So the show left town on the Sunday, and I stayed on till the Monday, and I was doing an architecture tour on the boat through Chicago, and the weather was amazing that week.
It was
November in Chicago, but it was like sun shining. And that night I got a taxi back to the airport, and the woman was like, "I'm really worried Trump's going to win." I was like, "Oh, really? Are you?" Yeah, because back here it was all Hillary's going to win. This guy's not serious. And the following Friday was the election, I think, and then the following Sunday they were protesting outside Trump Tower in snow. And you're like, "Wow, this is a metaphor." This is kind of this is a bit too on the nose, really. Like, the sun. This is the last days of Rome, and it was it was quite striking. And I think the RFU probably regretted the fact that they stayed in Trump's hotel afterwards. But I think that it was an Irish connection. The manager was Irish or something.
Right.
They were well looked after and everything. It was. But they had options.
Deep dish pizza.
All the food.
I'm sure, everything.
All the food was all tried.
Yeah.
But the architecture is stunning.
Incredible place. I haven't been back. Ireland played there, and they played Italy a couple of years later, and my sister's wedding was on, so I didn't make it, but I'm hoping they'll do another. I'm happy for these junkets to happen if I can get to go.
The Chicago Science Museum, if anyone hasn't been, obviously as a space geek I'm going to recommend that as well, but the Museum of Science and Industry, I think it is, the Apollo 8 capsule, the first flight around the moon is on display there, so definitely check it out if you're...
You've been there?
Yeah, well, I've been to Chicago, but it was only for a few nights, but I've been to that particular museum, and it's epic.
Okay.
But the boat tours are amazing.
It's incredible, yeah.
If anybody wants to bring us over to do the show, the AM show is actually the best show to bring over as opposed to the evening show. It doesn't really work from a time perspective.
Well, surely there's an anniversary of Chicago coming up soon.
Manufacture one anyway. The sixth anniversary.
We'll bring Conor Murray. We'll remember the day. Sounds good.
So Maro Itoje is next.
Yeah. And I could have picked either of Maro Itoje's performances against New Zealand, either for the Lions in July 2017, as I look at it, or in that World Cup semi-final, which I was at in Yokohama in 2019, 2 years later. I've never seen a player dominate a game like Maro Itoje can do, and when he's on it, he is just magnificent. He just, I don't know what it is about him, but his force of personality, his incredible athletic ability, his skill set, he just strikes fear in opponents that no one else can. He's physically dominant. He has a charisma that you can see from the stand, which is a really weird thing to say, but you can hear him sometimes, like the closed doors matches. You could hear him barking all the time. He's in people's faces. People don't like him because he's playing for England against Ireland, and that's fair enough. But he lived in Ireland, between Saracens and England. Like he haunted Ireland for about 3 or 4 years there. And in this game, the game that turned the series around for the Lions, like 2009, except for they got the job done this time. He was just phenomenal, and he gives away a lot of penalties, frustrates people. He wasn't perfect by any means, but he lived on the edge. And by the end, the entire stand was singing "O Maro Itoje" to the sound of Seven Nation Army. It's not very original, but it was pretty effective. He was brilliant that day, and again 2 years later, he backed it up against New Zealand again in arguably a bigger game for England in a World Cup semi-final. He was phenomenal.
There's a trend there, like Carney being 23 in that year with the Lions. Itoje, the youngest member of the squad, I'm just reading there, and he was 22 at the time. Like the obliviousness of youth in some ways when it comes to the Lions. Probably Itoje and Carney in those instances didn't think about the weight of the occasion. It was clearly just go for it and enjoy yourself.
No, and he's a deep thinker, Itoje. He comes across quite arrogant sometimes when he's doing interviews and things, but when he sits down and does a proper sit-down interview, he comes across as a really intelligent, there's more to life than rugby kind of figure. But when he gets out there, he's an incredible competitor.
It does seem strange that Eddie Jones had that weird pop in his book about him not being captain material and needs to. I'm like, would you not just make him captain and see what happens?
I've always thought that he's a really obvious choice for captain. No, I've never been in a dressing room with him, but he's so important to every team that he's in. He is the alpha in the room. And maybe he's not great making speeches. And Jones had a go at Emirati Kanu as well, so maybe he doesn't like players who court the limelight away from their sport, and that's part of it as well. But I mean, Eddie courts the limelight away from his sport quite a bit. So
they've got Eddie 2 jobs, like.
Yeah, well, 2. He's got about 10, and he. I suppose part of what he does in the media is to take the pressure away from the players, and he wants the players to focus on the job. But like I told you, he's never let him down. Even when they were going really, like England go boom and bust quite a lot.
Yeah.
Even when they're terrible, I think Itoje is still brilliant. And sometimes he pushes, especially when Saracens got relegated, he pushes it. And he's trying to do things he's not able to do because he hasn't been playing at the highest level. But he'd be the first name on my team sheet. He'd be my captain in any team I'm in. And on that day, he was just first to everything. It was a difficult night in Wellington, a difficult stadium to play in. Lions were 1-0 down after being fairly bullied in the first test. They did fight their way back into it with that magnificent try that Sean O'Brien finished off.
They
the Liam
got
Williams
hammered
break
for about 60 minutes in the first test.
A bit like 2009, which happened the same way, and they finished strong and they scored that try from the end of the world. Liam Williams started it under his own, in his own 22, and O'Brien finished it off brilliantly. But in this game, Murray actually scores a try in it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was all kicks. Maybe Murray scored a try in the first test. I'm getting confused. But Itoje is his work in tight, his maul work, his work in the air was phenomenal. He was ripping balls off lads. He was in lads' faces. Like, you're playing against the world champions at the time. It was before their sheen was gone.
Oh, they were
starting to decline. No, I think they were starting to decline. They were at their best at the World Cup final in 2015. They were starting to come back to the pack, but no one realised it yet. But he could see that there was weakness there, and he was up against Retallick and Whitelock, and he was like, I don't think who you are. I'm going to bully you. I'm 22. I'm the best player on this pitch, and he was. There's no. Even like the O'Connell line breaks and stuff, there's no great moment where he bursts through or he shines light. I watched highlights of him again last night, and like they're all nuts and bolts things, but he does them so well.
Here it's like a Maro Itoje controversial performance, and it's like 4 minutes of him tackling and not being pushed back at any stage, not taking
getting in people's faces. He's the dominant tackle stat that arrived 2 years later when he was brilliant again in Dublin in that 19 game where England derailed Ireland's entire project under Joe Schmidt. Like, he was great. That's another day you could have picked for him or Tuilagi. That was a magnificent individual performance as well. When Itoje is good, he's he's enthralling to watch, and he dominates fixtures in a way that I've never seen any other rugby player do. I did see Lomu live once in Dublin, but it was towards the end of his career. I'm sure if I'd seen Lomu in 95, I'd feel the same way about him. But again, it's a team, very much a team game. It's very all about cohesion and all that sort of stuff, and how the parts interlink. Sometimes one player just rises above it and is so dominant that you can just tell that he's a special player.
Well, I know like throwing numbers at people doesn't sometimes paint the best of pictures, but on that Lions tour, just reading here, Itoje made 49 tackles on the tour, 45 carries, 3 turnovers, 12 line-out wins and a steal. Like, that's sheer dominance by any stretch.
Yeah, and that tour was hard because they played against good teams every week, and he was part of a. Gatland got it pretty right in that one. They played the first team against Crusaders, against the Maori, and then against in the test series. So he didn't play against any bad teams on that tour. It was a really good, like the Lions. I mean, Lions is obviously a good team, but that Lions team, I think, when you look at the names in the paper, it was pretty. Peak Johnny Sexton, although he was coming into, he played his way into form. Sexton and Farrell playing together, it was. They should potentially have won the series under it. Sean O'Brien was very critical of Gatland at the end of it, in particular Rob Howley's attacking strategy. You'd have to agree with him, but I suppose Gatland can say, look, I drew a series in New Zealand.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good achievement.
Yeah, Gatland had plenty to fight back with. As he took the stuff out of his pocket that night, we had him over, and we realised that the beef was real. I like, in my head, Rocky Elsom had a kind of similar impact on Leinster that one season.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he actually dominated games so much as had big moments in 3 games in a row.
Yeah, actually, now that you say it, like that 2009 semi-final against Munster, Elsom was phenomenal that day. At Croke Park, I was on Hill 16, so I probably wasn't in the greatest place to analyse the game.
Yeah.
Probably had a couple of points as well, because at that point I hadn't become a working journalist, so I was enjoying myself. But Elsom had at time some great performances, and single-handedly, not single-handedly because that was a good team, but they needed someone like that who just didn't give a damn to come along without the baggage of history and
Conor Murray
be
did
a
the
rock
same
star
in that Ireland performance. It's like that level of those performances where you get over the line for the first time, I think always have more resonance for fans, and I suspect for the players who are involved as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you can only make history once. Like that team in Chicago and that 2009 team will always be the team that broke the duck, and no one can take that away from them. Even though I'm sure they're looking at every time Ireland beat New Zealand, their chance at gala dinners and stuff is diminishing. I mean, some of them have beaten them loads of times. Sexton's been on the pitch for every one of them, and Murray missed one of them, but he's been there for most of them as well.
Yeah.
I hadn't realised until the most recent Lions tour the tradition of giving the mascot, the little lion, to the youngest member of the squad. So obviously that would have been Itoje in that year, but it's something that they should keep going. I think it's a nice little tradition to let the youngest know that they're still
I like
young.
the Lions. Lions is weird because whenever I go on it, I think it's a magnificent thing, and then I watched the last one from afar. I covered it from afar, and like the Sky Sports stuff just grates on me, and like a lot of the hype around it and the immortality beckons stuff can wear people quite thin quite quickly. But when you're there and you see the legion of fans who come over and what it means to the players and like just the calibre of the games, and those things, like I think in terms of squad building, like again the 97 documentary built, I think, is what the modern Lions is built on, and that's the kind of thing that they were doing, and they're basically all copying that. And it is like, because they try and hide it on them. I said they weren't doing too much messing on the Itoje though. Like you can bully. Lee Halfpenny was the youngest player in 2009. Like he was tiny and young and quite callow looking, whereas like you're not going to be hiding them doing much to Itoje to kind of to catch him out. Like he's terrifying.
He will come for you for sure. Right, that is this week's You Had to Be There with Roy O'Connor. Good stuff. Thanks a million.
It was so unexpected.
You had to be there.
Covering Celtic at that time was a brilliant thing. The atmosphere at Parkhead was always great.
You had to be there.
Nobody ever talks about this game. Nobody saw it.
You had to be there.
Rory, do you want to talk to you about your training? You're running a lot.
I am, yeah. No, I'm doing the marathon in October. It's October 31st. It's the last Sunday in October. I think people who follow me on social media know that myself and my wife Siobhan lost her son Malachy in April of this year, and I'd already planned on doing the marathon, but unfortunately, and I thought that would be derailed, but it's been a really good way of kind of processing all that and stuff. The training has been really hard but really good, and I'm doing it to raise money for Crumlin Children's Hospital, in particular the PICU, the paediatric ICU, and this cardiac centre there, which like the care that he received in there was incredible, and the way they looked after us was incredible. So it's a way of honouring his memory and also trying to give back. And I put it up on Twitter the night before last, and I've already, like, the response has been absolutely incredible. I've been blown away by it.
Stuck the link up there, and we'll tweet the link out as well.
Yeah, anyone who wants to, it's on my Twitter as well. But it's been anyone who's donated so far. I really, really appreciate it. I wasn't expecting the level of kind of reaction and support that I've received, so I kind of have to do it now.
Yeah, 100%. How is the running actually going?
Good. Yeah, I won't be breaking any records. I did an adventure race a couple of years ago, so since I finished playing rugby in about 2017, running is one of the things I turned to try and keep fit, and I enjoy it. But I think 14k or 15k was the longest I had done, so I'm up to 26 at the moment, and I'm finding the last 4 or 5 pretty tough, but I'm sure there's lots of people training for the Dublin Marathon out there who can relate. It's my first one. I always wanted to do it. My dad did it in 1980, and he had a plaque on the wall in our house and a picture from that, and I always wanted to do it, and I never thought I could. I used to hate doing laps when I played Gaelic, and I never thought I had any endurance in me. And as I've got older, I've realised actually I probably should have been doing endurance sport rather than team sports. I actually have a bit of more of an engine than I realised. And yeah, I'm 40 this year. I wanted to do it before I was 40 anyway, and this has given me a good cause to do it for.
It's dog ignorance as well, those last few kilometres. Like, are you one of those listen to music or podcasts, or just listen to the world around you?
Yeah, sometimes listen to you guys. Sometimes just throw on a couple of cheesy dance tunes and just kind of try and keep going. And yeah, it is dog ignorance. It's generally I go out and back, so you're trying to, like, I have to get home somehow, and I don't bring my lead card, so I have no choice.
Go halfway.
Yeah, the first kind of 70% I feel fine, and then suddenly you're hitting. I don't, like, I'm doing all the, taking the right nutritional stuff and stuff. I'm hopefully not going to hit the wall, but you never know. But it's hard. It's like anyone who's ever done it before, I admire them for it. It's finding the time. It's
Shane's
just
subtly hinting that he's there.
I wasn't going to bring it up.
Shane's young. I've seen Shane. I follow Shane on Strava. I've seen his times. Shane's fine. It's not a pick on him. Like, he's
2015. I should get 2015 double marathon tattooed on me.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm a type 5 forward who's trying to run long distance. It's a different. At 39, it's a different challenge, Shane. It'll come for you one day.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're very lucky that your birthday comes after Halloween. Then, otherwise, you would have been a bit goosed.
I would have. Yeah. And it's like it didn't happen the last couple of years, and to be honest, I threw it. I saw the lottery was open, and I threw my name in, thinking, that's not going to happen. Like, at least I'll say I went for it and I didn't get it, and I'll put it off. And then I got the thing, and then with everything that was happening, I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this year. It's not going to. And things went a certain way, and now it's given me something to kind of train for and focus on, a reason to get out of the house and stay fit. And I really enjoy running now. And yeah, it's hard when you get over 20 kilometres and your legs, every bit of your being is saying stop, and your legs are starting to fall off, and you're feeling pain in places you didn't know existed. But I now have like hundreds of people kind of support behind me, and I have a good cause to do it for. So whenever I'm starting to struggle, I've something to reach for and something to think of. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think like the day itself is going to be great, and
it's become a proper event. The city's kind of welcomed it properly. Beginning to understand that actually other cities turn this into a carnival. And it's a carnival of wellness as opposed to just grinding stuff out. So.
Absolutely, yeah. No, like I can't wait now. Although I can wait for the training. Like, I've still a few more miles to add onto the clock first before I'm able to do it. But as I say, I've committed now. But I've gone public. I've talked about it here.
There you go.
I have to follow through. Even if I have to walk, I'll do it.
Oh, look, it's going to be worth it. It's for a great cause, as Rory said, and I said we'll tweet out the link to It's Just Giving, is it?
It's Just Giving, yeah. It's on my Instagram and Twitter, and if you guys could tweet it, that'd be great as well.
100%. All right, Rory, good stuff. Thanks a million. Best of luck with that.
Thank you.
We're back tomorrow with Aisling and Adrian on hosting. We'll have the return of the Champions Cup winning head coach Ronan O'Gara. Samuel Luckhurst reacts to Manchester United in Europe, and Ireland head coach Greg McWilliams joins us in the studio to reflect on the recent tour of Japan, with plenty more besides. Right now, we're going to leave you with the return of Wednesday Night Rugby with Rory, who's back, and Liam Toland alongside Will on last night's show. Enjoy.
Welcome along to Wednesday Night Rugby. We're going to be talking about the return of the UR season, and also we've got an emerging Ireland squad which was named with 35 players today. They're going to play games against Griquas on the 30th of September, the Pumas on the 5th of October, and the Cheetahs on the 9th of October. There is a youthful look about the squad. The only players who've already been capped at senior level: Ulster's Robert Balakoon, Connacht's Caoilin Bade, we've got Munster's Shane Daly, and the Leinster back row Max Deegan. But for the best part, this has got a real spattering of youth players from the last two under-20 squads have been picked to go along to play these games in South Africa, and effectively they're going to be away for the next 3 weeks or so. Delighted to say on Wednesday Night Rugby we're joined by Liam Toland and Rory O'Connor. Gentlemen, how are you getting on?
Good, thanks, Will. Good.
Liam, can I start with you about the idea of this emerging squad? In many ways, I think we were probably reserving judgment until we saw the 35 players who were picked. Now that we've seen who were picked, what do you think about this emerging squad?
Well, I think in the first instance, Will, the fact Ireland did so unbelievably well in New Zealand in the series, I think it gives Andy Farrell a very positive bargaining chip when he's planning this season. Like, I don't know, maybe Rory will help me out a little bit. I don't know when this was first mooted, but it sounds like it was just sprung out. And I think that the success in New Zealand certainly gives the Irish management a really strong hand in dictating this. I think it's a great idea. I travelled in a development tour to Namibia, Zimbabwe and South Africa back in 1993. And there was a smattering of internationals. It's very similar to this, we'll say, this side. Great cross-section of Leinster, Munster, Ulster and Connacht players. It's a really good idea from an Irish management point of view, and obviously the fact that there's a slightly different coaching structure in it as well will expose Simon Easterby and his kind of team into it. That all said, I think one of the words that I got early in the week was that Simon Easterby said there were compromises on both sides. So in terms of selection, what people ended up in selection because somebody else was being, I suppose the home province were saying, listen, we want this guy. And how many people got in because of that and how many people lost out. A couple of big ones. Kieran Frawley, I've been barking on anytime I've been on News Talk all last season. I'd love to see him at 10. Obviously, Leinster there's only 1 10 every week and there's a pile of them available. I think Kieran Frawley is someone who could really, this tour could be very helpful to him. There's other players there who come back from injury, someone like a John Hodnett, Alex Kendallen, both back row players, really talented young guys. And I think you said in your build-up there, Will, there's 8 players from the Grand Slam winning team of 2019, which straight away tells you there's youth in the side. So very exciting. I'm not so sure how the home provinces are happy with it. And player welfare, obviously, it's an unbelievable fixture list ahead of us all the way through to the end of the Six Nations into World Cup, but very exciting.
Yeah, Rory, I wonder how much negotiation had to take place between the RFU and the provinces here, because a lot of the players who've been selected would probably have played in the absence of some of the frontline players on the opening few weeks of the new season, but now they're going to be effectively going into camp for a month.
Yeah, I think the provinces have been very diplomatic about this on the record, but behind the scenes there was a lot of disquiet about the way this came about. Initially, we heard that the provincial A teams may be going to South Africa to play against the Griquas, the Pumas and the Cheetahs, who are the other Currie Cup teams in South Africa. So in the URC, Connacht are actually in South Africa at the same time, and they're playing against the Bulls and the Stormers, the 2 teams who reached the final of the URC last year, and the 2 strongest South African, well, the Sharks are pretty good as well, but 2 of the 3 strongest South African teams, whereas these players are going off to play against 3 teams who, are below URC standard. And initially, as I say, it was going to be the provincial A teams who went over, or that was floated anyway. And instead, what we have is this kind of very interesting selection of players. But it's not an Ireland A selection. It's not. Ireland A will play New Zealand in November on the night before the South Africa game, and it will be much more similar to the team that played against the Maori. This is the next tranche of players down, and there's a lot of interesting names. There are a lot of players that you think, almost will be part, key players during the next World Cup cycle, but they're obviously sifting through them to see if there's 1 or 2 who may be able to make the grade in the next 12 months first. And if they do, they'll be on deck for, they'll know the systems, they'll have worked with the coaches, they'll have been in the environment. Like Bloemfontein's a really difficult place to spend 10 days. It's not I don't want to upset our South African listeners too much, but I wouldn't say it's the biggest holiday destination in South Africa. And I think they're going to be worked pretty hard. There's not a lot of distractions away from rugby over there, and it's going to be pretty intense for them. And that's all designed to try and, I think, road test them as internationals and see who's ready and who's not. And if they come back and think Nathan Doak is a test-ready player, or Antoine Frisch, who Munster have signed from Bristol Bears, a French-born Irish qualified player, if they think he could step in for kind of November Six Nations in the World Cup, or someone like Roman Solanoa, the Hawaiian-born prop who Leinster signed, who's played about 6 or 7 games since he's arrived, but is physically, the right prototype for player to play international rugby. He just has no experience really at the top level. If they discover one of these players and bring them back to the provinces, they'll say it's a job well done. The provinces would argue that to be better off staying with them and playing URC rugby. But I suppose there's been a bit of horse trading going on between who goes and who doesn't. I mean, Jack Crowley goes, but Munster has still have Ben Healy. That's that's definitely a trade-off. I'm sure Healy might have gone in different circumstances. So there's obviously been a bit of deal-breaking behind the scenes.
Yeah, Liam, the most high-profile player going, arguably, is Robert Balogun, who was a player that, if it hadn't been for an injury tail end of the season, he could well have toured to New Zealand this summer.
Absolutely, but like we got to take into account here a little bit that at elite sport level, there's an awful lot of names now pushing in, as Rory said, coming in with the eye to the next World Cup. And there's a lot of guys who are aiming for places on the World Cup this time around in 2013, and Balogun is definitely one of them. But you need a bit of luck as well. You need a bit of fortune. You need a coach that values as well. The question is, if I was talking to Balogun, is given a choice, which tour would he want to be going on? The domestic tour or this tour? And a little bit of selfishness from the players. I'm guessing that a lot of these guys won't be disappointed by selected, because there's another opportunity to spend time with ultimately guys who are going to be selected at Irish level. So I see it as an opportunity. I know there'll be a little bit of kind of confusion, like he's in his mid-20s, he's already capped, but that's the nature of it. You don't want to bring, you want to bring enough experience so the next guys behind them can feed in. Like ideally, if you're starting a brand new player who hasn't played in that environment, you want some structure around, and having Balogun there would be very helpful to other players. So it could be that the Irish coaching system are saying, the reason why we're picking Balogun is, yes, we want to see him, we want to encourage him at this level, but they might be partnering up with somebody else that won't happen in the province, because they might be marrying up a Munster player or a Leinster player, and they want to see it. So there's all sorts of combinations that the elite coaches are thinking about.
I wonder as well, Rory, when it comes to the other players who've been capped previously that are going along, that they're known quantities with their province. Quaylen Blade, Shane Daly, obviously in an area where Munster are pretty well stacked in the backs. And then in the case of Max Deegan, particularly with Leinster, maybe this is a guarantee of game time for him in a position where Leinster are really, really competitive with the amount of players they have to play in his position.
Yeah, like Max Deegan was the World Under-20 Player of the Year in 2016, and he was on the same team as James Ryan, Jacob Stockdale, Andrew Porter, Hugo Keane and Will Connors, and they've all got more caps than him. And he must be, I know he's had a hugely serious injury after winning his first cap against England in Andy Farrell's first season, and that really stymied his momentum. But like, he's behind Jack Conan and Caelan Doris in the number 8 jersey at Leinster, and he's been offered moves to different provinces and has turned them down, and has resisted that. He thinks he's good enough to start for Leinster. Is he best served by, like, he probably will play more rugby, because it's the same. Like, from what I understand, the provinces will have their internationals back on deck, the majority of them, for rounds 3 and 4 of the URC. So Doris and Conan, injury permitting, will be available. So yeah, he'll be playing in those games. He'll be, I don't know if he'll captain, but he'll be probably one of the leadership figures over there. And he's a player who's got the athletic capability of playing international rugby. Definitely, there's no doubt about that. But he needs to produce over there, because he needs to come back to Leinster saying, look what I did for the emerging Ireland team. Look what I can do for you. That's what players how they have to look at it. He's one of the older players on the tour, a bit like Caelan Blade. You've also got guys who, James Culhane was, hasn't played for Leinster yet, as far as I'm aware. He's part of the Leinster Academy. He was at the Ireland 20 last year. He's a much younger player than some of the other guys going out there. So there's a bit of a shift in profile between some players and others. Joe McCarthy, really highly rated, was, probably went to New Zealand thinking he might get capped on that tour last summer, and he's going over. I think him and Balogun are the ones, I think and Frawley, of course, are the ones they really think can make the step up. So yeah, sure, like, the players have to look at this as an opportunity. Farrell won't be hands on, but I understand he'll be there. He'll be watching closely, and if you impress in this camp, if you impress these coaches, November is not that far around the corner. There is an A game to play. This is a real chance for all of these players to impress.
Yeah, McCarthy, Prendergast, Kieran Frawley were the players in the squad who played against the Maori, and all three played pretty well. This is a bit of Simon Easterby from earlier today. Here's what he had to say about the role that Frawley is likely to play on this tour.
I think there has to be a degree of flexibility, but we feel Frawley has the potential to lead in a number of different positions. Obviously, he's played 12 a fair bit for Leinster. But we see him, which he did in the Maori weeks, as being a guy that can lead from the front at 10, lead a week. he'll be asked in the next few weeks to do a slightly different role to what he was doing in New Zealand, because he had a lot of senior players around him. We feel like he has the ability to step up and front the week, lead the week, as someone like the extreme Johnny Sexton does week in, week out, and has done that for a number of years. So giving those players like Frawls the opportunity to put himself at the forefront of a week, lead it, and take the team to a performance on a weekend in that position at 10 is crucial for us. We're still finding a little bit about Frawls and the way he can play. You can see that when they're playing in the URC and they're playing for their provinces, but it is slightly different. And there's not a huge difference, but it is different when you have them in your environment across a couple of week period. And hopefully we can benefit from that time, and Frawls can benefit from that time with us when he goes back into Leinster after this trip.
Liam, it sounds from Easterby's comments there that effectively he's going as a 10 with the cover that he can go across 12, but they want to have a look at 10. I think that's understandable after the way he played, particularly in the second test against the Maori. And given that the third out half slot for the World Cup squad is pretty much wide open right now.
Well, Will, you kind of summarised it well yourself there. If there is any question mark over the validity of this tour, when you hear the head coach speaking about the importance of a pivotal position, like if nothing else, if this tour provides Andy Farrell and his management with a credible succession line beyond Johnny Sexton, I don't know how much the tour is costing and ultimately who's paying for it, but that would be a phenomenal return if Kieran Frawley comes back, not just as a 10, but as a man, as a leader, as a guy who's like, most of us watch the game the weekend and that's it. But there's so much, like Rory mentioned about Max Deegan there, resisting the temptation going to another province. Like the value of being in the Leinster environment week in, week out is enormously important, even though you might get less rugby. And here's an example from an Irish environment point of view, that the value of Frawley going out there and be seen to man up. And that doesn't mean he has to shout and roar and be bully, but in the sense that probably something about Carberry at times, you would say, for all his talent, all his skill, is he really controlling the fixture? And you get a sense from what Andy Farrell is saying there. He wants the next 10 to be able not just to control the fixture, but control the week. And if Frawley can do that, like Chicas, that's some commentary from your coach or the Irish coach before you go out on the tour. There's a lot of pressure on him. But there's other advantages to the tour. But certainly if that happens, and Frawley is comfortable doing that, well, boy, I think we have a serious player in our hands anyway, but that would really copper fasten it.
Yeah, Rory, Ron O'Gara said to us many Fridays on OTB AM that he loves Frawley, loves the idea of Frawley being a potential playmaking 10, feels that maybe he suffered because of his versatility to a certain extent, that he can play in midfield as well. This is a chance for Frawley to put himself front and centre in the out-half position here.
Yeah, because I was just checking there the Leinster injury bulletin while Liam was speaking, and Harry Byrne is fit, and Harry Byrne has won caps under Andy Farrell and went to the New Zealand tour, we think, as the third choice number 10, and picked up an injury over there and came back, having watched Kieran Frawley lead the back line in 2 games against the Maori. And now Harry Byrne is at Leinster while Frawley's off with this emerging Ireland squad. Harry Byrne's at Leinster at a time where Johnny Sexton's going to be reintegrated back into the team at some stage, and Ross Byrne, his older brother, is still there and is still, we think, higher up the pecking order based on his Leinster minutes to date. So has Kieran Frawley moved ahead of Harry Byrne now in the pecking order? Is that what we're to read into this? Is this an opportunity for Jack Crowley to do the same? This time in this camp, it's a really difficult, delicate balancing act for these players, because Byrne may have a couple of really good URC games to play in, and he may continue to be ahead of Frawley. But for Frawley, it's a real chance and a real opportunity. And like, I will be in agreement. Like Luke Fitzgerald's been banging on about Frawley for years about how he should be playing 10 and he's wasted at 12. And you look at him and, physically he's very robust. He plays a lot of games. I know he's had some injuries, but he looks, and maybe a stint at 12 helps in this regard. He looks like the closest thing there is to Johnny Sexton physically, as a defensive number 10. And that's the most underrated side of Johnny Sexton's game. So, yeah, sure, there's loads of parts to the game that he has to improve on if he's ever going to be like Johnny Sexton. And obviously we're not going to replace Johnny Sexton like for like whenever he does retire. But Frawley has a lot of the attributes you need to be a world-class, top-class 10. he's in a province where it's incredibly competitive, and there's more there's more really good 10s coming through at the academy level at the moment. So he's got to grasp his chance when it comes. And Leo Cullen was speaking on Monday. He said, look, if any of these guys want to play 10 for Leinster, they've got to be better than Johnny Sexton, and that's an incredible challenge to lay down. But at some stage, someone's got to do what Johnny Sexton did to Ron O'Gara all those years ago and put it up to him.
Connacht have a new captain this year as well, Eamon, Jack Carthy, and I was reading his comments from during the week about, he said he wants to have a big season. He feels the World Cup is still potentially there. He mentioned the fact he bolted to the World Cup in 2019 on the back of his provincial form. He's going to have a huge leadership role now as Connacht's actual captain. With the door being open for a third out half, is Jack Carthy good enough to get back in the picture again?
I got a sense that the coaches, and again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier on, Will, that there is an element of luck required at elite level, and you need coaches who back your style. I get a sense that Jack might not be the flavour of the month in that sense. You look at the window from Connacht's point of view, they have a really, really tough few opening weeks in their season. I think Gavin Thornbury coming back in the second row, who hasn't played as much rugby as he'd like, I think he's a huge addition. He's like a new signing in, if you like, for Connacht. It's a big few weeks for Jack. And I'm not so sure the coaches see him as that. I get a sense, just listening to Andy Farrell, the way he's talking about Kieran Frawley, you get a sense that he's looking for someone to step up and take over. Now, he's answering a question to journalists, is he going to be overly honest? But I think Andy Farrell, particularly kind of, if you just, you can tell a lot from what he says and doesn't say. So I think that Jack may be behind at this point in time.
Carthy went for surgery, Rory, during the summer. He had a troublesome wrist injury and finally got it sorted out. So in many ways that probably answered the question of whether he could go to New Zealand or not, that he went to surgery. But he seems to have always been kind of on the outside under Andy Farrell for the best part. He's been up for squads when people have got injured, but for the best part he's been looking in since Andy Farrell took over.
Yeah, he has. He was involved in the kind of post-COVID behind closed doors stretch, and he I remember he was 24th man over in Paris in that Six Nations decider back in 2020, and then he was out of the squad for a good chunk as Billy Burns and Ross Byrne got goals. But he was the one who was called up last year when Ireland needed a third choice 10, and he came off the bench in Paris and won his first cap since that World Cup in 2019, which I'm sure was a huge personal milestone. And it was only a couple of minutes, and I know the pass that he threw out to Dan Sheehan in the last minute was used against him in the analysis. But I quite admired the fact that he went and threw that pass. That it didn't come off, but he saw the space and he went for it, and he had the confidence to do it. He spoke at the URC launch last week, and he was actually a bit down on the fact that he's turning 30 around now. I think it might have been this week.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliant.